Story 1. My husband brings women home every night, but this time, he gave me an unexpected gift. A lie that left me speechless. To make me jealous, my husband brings a different woman home every night. He spends the night with her and, in the morning, orders his men to get rid of her. This morning was no different. I stood outside Enrique's room listening to the sounds escaping through the cracks of the door and bitterly smiled. For me, this was nothing new, but I still felt a pang of sadness about the situation. When I came back to my senses, his bedroom door suddenly opened and Enrique stared at me intently. I immediately looked away and kept walking. Before I could get too far, I heard his voice ordering the men to take away the woman he had spent the night with. I let out a soft chuckle as I walked down the stairs. Yes, hearing that was already part of my routine. After all, he is a ruthless mafia boss and I, Mariana Oliveira, am his wife. In the kitchen, I sat down to eat. The maid was ready to serve me and the armed men roamed the house, a constant reminder of who he was. Mariana, get ready. Enrique's voice caught my attention. I turned and saw him approaching my seat. For what? I asked lazily. He sat in the chair next to me and started eating. Today is my parents' birthday. They're throwing a costume party and want us to attend, he said emotionlessly while continuing to eat alone. I nodded and followed him in silence, as we always did when we were together. Even though we were married, we acted like complete strangers. I'll bring your dress later, he said, looking at me while wiping his mouth. I nodded mechanically and took a sip of water. He was about to get up when I decided to speak, lazily leaning back in the chair. Are we going to pretend to be a happy couple again? I asked sarcastically. He didn't answer. He simply left at 11 o'clock and left me alone in the kitchen. I faked a smile and shook my head. I wish there were always parties, I murmured to myself, thinking that those were the only moments when he seemed kind to me. The party was as extravagant as expected. I walked down the stairs confidently, wearing an elegant gold halter-neck dress and silver heels. Downstairs, Enrique was waiting for me, staring at me so intensely that if I didn't know him better, I would have thought he was enchanted. When I finally stood in front of him, I cleared my throat. Shall we? I asked, but he grabbed my arm. I shivered. He pulled me closer and I held my breath. What is he doing? I thought. Then, I felt something cold against my chest. A necklace. I blinked several times, incredulous, looking at him. Enrique took a step back with a neutral expression. What is this? I asked, frowning and looking at the necklace. Don't you know what it is? He replied sarcastically. My nervousness slowly faded. I rolled my eyes and looked back at the necklace. Despite the countless thoughts running through my mind, I simply said, "Thank you." It was just a simple diamond necklace, but it meant a lot to me. It was the first gift he had given me in all our years of marriage. Normally, he would just transfer money to my account and let me buy whatever I wanted. Don't overthink it, he said coldly. It's just to keep up appearances. Let's go. Hearing his words, the smile I had just managed to form quickly disappeared. I watched him leave the mansion. I bitterly smiled and looked up, holding back my tears. After gathering my thoughts, I followed him to the car. We both stared out the window, ignoring each other. Don't stray from me when we arrive, he said coldly, still looking out the window. All right, I replied immediately, leaning back in the seat. A few minutes later, we arrived at the venue. Before getting out of the car, I put on a golden mask that covered only half of my face. Enrique also put on his mask and we walked in together. His right hand was possessively around my waist, as if he wanted to show everyone that I belonged to him. Even with our faces partially hidden, we attracted everyone's attention. His parents welcomed us warmly, especially his mother, who quickly came to greet me. "Daughter!" she exclaimed cheerfully, kissing my cheek and not even noticing Enrique by my side. "Happy birthday," I said softly, returning the smile. "Thank you. You look so beautiful. No wonder everyone is staring at you," his mother joked. Upon hearing that, Enrique's hand on my waist tightened, but he said nothing. When we sat down, his father's question nearly made me choke. "When can we expect a grandchild?" he asked. I coughed awkwardly, and Enrique quickly poured me some water and gently rubbed my back. "Are you all right, dear?" his mother asked, concerned. I tried to smile. "I'm fine," I replied, sitting up straight. "You're scaring the kids, Javier," Enrique's mother told his father. Enrique and I exchanged glances. I didn't know how he was feeling, but I could sense he was watching me the entire time, even though I avoided looking at him. "You've been married for over 2 years. It's about time you gave us a grandchild," his father joked. I blushed at the comment, unsure of how to respond. "Next month," Enrique suddenly said in a firm voice. I turned my head toward him, stunned. Before I could process his words, he leaned in and kissed me. My heart started pounding wildly. There was no sun that morning. The sky over Madrid was covered with thick clouds, as if the universe sensed the approaching storm. From the kitchen, I heard firm footsteps coming down the stairs. I knew exactly who it was. Of course, Enrique moved through the house like a king in a medieval castle, and in some ways he was, but I was not his queen, at least not in the traditional sense. I was a decoration, a trophy in his endless game of power. While I quietly ate breakfast, I felt his presence behind me. He didn't bother to greet me. He simply poured himself some coffee and sat across from me. His gaze was cold, calculating, as always. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was routine. After all, we had been married for 2 years, but we treated each other like complete strangers. "There's another dinner tonight," he finally said, breaking the silence. "With whom?" I asked, pretending not to care while stirring my spoon. "With the governor and some investors. Do what you do best. Smile and stay quiet," he replied without looking at me. His indifference irritated me, but it no longer hurt as it once did. I had learned to hide my emotions behind a mask of apathy. However, something in his tone made me look up. There was a shadow in his eyes, a flicker of impatience that wasn't usual for him. Something was off. Hours later, as I was getting ready for the evening, I decided to explore his office. It was a place I rarely dared to enter, but something inside me pushed me to do it. Enrique had always been meticulous, but in his rush, he had left some documents scattered across his desk. My eyes landed on an envelope stained with coffee drops. I carefully opened it and my heart stopped as I read its contents. It was a letter addressed to one of his trusted men, ordering my elimination. My hands trembled as I held the paper, but my mind remained cold. This wasn't just a murder order. It was a carefully crafted plan to make it look like an accident. Enrique planned to get rid of me after the dinner. I carefully closed the envelope and left the office before anyone could see me. In my room, as I slipped into the red dress he had chosen for me, I finished adjusting it in front of the mirror, my hands still trembling slightly. The fabric hugged my body perfectly, as if it had been tailor-made for this occasion, and maybe it had been. Enrique was always meticulous about appearances, but now I knew that this attention to detail was part of something much bigger. Something deadly. I stared at my reflection, trying to recognize the woman looking back at me. Her eyes were empty, but there was a spark I hadn't seen in years. Anger, frustration, a nearly primal will to survive. I calmly ascended the stairs, feeling the weight of the necklace Enrique had given me days before. A rare gift supposedly to maintain appearances. How ironic. Now I understood. He was preparing me to be displayed one last time before being discarded like another piece in his cruel game. Enrique was waiting for me in the foyer, impeccable in his suit. When he saw me, he gave me a cold smile. "You look stunning," he whispered with venom. "Thank you," I murmured, controlling the tremble in my voice. He offered me his arm and I took it, feeling the coldness of his skin. We walked to the car in silence. On the way to the dinner with the governor and the investors, I stared into the night through the window. My heart was pounding, but my mind was already forming a plan. I couldn't simply run. Enrique had eyes everywhere. If I tried to escape, he would make sure to find me, and this time there would be no disguised plans. It would be quick and brutal. The solution had to be different. We arrived at the luxurious restaurant with guards strategically placed. Enrique got out first and, with a rehearsed gesture, opened the door for me. I smiled, a fake smile, but enough to play the role he expected from me. Inside the hall, everything was perfect. Soft lights, the sound of glasses clinking, muffled conversations. I saw the governor and several businessmen Enrique wanted to impress. He placed his hand possessively on the small of my back and guided me to the table as if we were a happy couple. My eyes scanned the room. Guards, attentive waiters, no easy way out. The conversations began. Enrique spoke naturally about investments, business, and power. I just smiled and nodded when necessary. Wine was served. Enrique took a sip and offered me the glass. For a moment I wondered if he had poisoned it. But no, Enrique was too meticulous for something so obvious. He wanted something that couldn't be traced back to him. An accident, a fall down the stairs, a runaway car, a power failure. Something clean. While he talked, an idea took shape. Subtle, precise. I discreetly grabbed my phone and pretended to check messages. I quickly sent a text to Clara. A former employee Enrique had unfairly fired. I knew she resented him. We weren't friends, but we had something in common. Contempt for that man. I need your help. Urgent. I can pay you whatever you want. Meet me behind the restaurant in 20 minutes. Enrique didn't notice. He was too absorbed in his lies. I pretended I needed to use the restroom. He gave me that calculating look but simply nodded. I calmly made my way to the service door. The alley was dark and silent. Clara appeared minutes later, suspicious. "What do you want?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "Enrique wants to kill me," I blurted out. Her eyes widened. "That's not surprising. Why should I care?" "Because you hate him as much as I do, and I can make it worth your while. I have access to a safe, documents, offshore accounts. I can give you whatever you want." She was silent for a moment, thinking. "What do you need?" "Just a distraction. Nothing major. Just enough to throw him off balance." She smirked. "That I can do." I returned to the table with the same calm expression. Enrique glanced at me and kept talking. Minutes later, a waiter approached and whispered something in Enrique's ear. His brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning curiosity. "There's a problem in the parking lot. Someone messed with my car. I'll check. Stay here." He quickly got up and left. I took a deep breath. This was my moment. I stood and approached the reception desk. I smiled at the receptionist. "My husband asked me to grab the key to the private suite. He forgot it." She hesitated. "Could you show me some ID?" I tilted my head slightly. "You know who he is, don't you? You know what happens to people who disobey him." She paled and handed me the key. I navigated the hallways to the private room where Enrique closed his dirty deals. I opened the safe with the code I had memorized over the years. Documents, USB drives, fake accounts. I took everything, stuffed it in my purse, and quietly slipped out. Outside, I heard shouting. Clara had done her part. I didn't look back. I got into the first taxi I saw. To the airport, fast. As the car pulled away, I smiled for the first time in years. This wasn't just an escape. I had proof. Enrique couldn't hunt me down without destroying himself. This time, the game was mine. Every mile the taxi drove, the weight of fear and anxiety slowly transformed into something solid. Determination. This was no longer just about escaping. It was the beginning of my revenge. I wasn't going to hide anymore, not after everything Enrique had done to me. I now had everything I needed to destroy him. My destination wasn't the airport. I asked the driver to drop me off at a discreet hotel in the city center. I needed time, silence, and focus. I entered the room and spread out all the documents and USB drives I had taken from the safe across the bed. They were forged contracts, money laundering records, evidence of bribery, and even assassination orders. Enrique had always been careful, but his arrogance made him believe no one would dare betray him. I spent the entire night analyzing every paper, every detail, every number, and every name. Among the documents, I found something even more valuable. Offshore bank accounts linked to influential politicians and powerful businessmen. Enrique wasn't acting alone. He was just the tip of a massive network of corruption. The next morning, I reached out to Clara. I couldn't do this alone. When we met, she seemed uneasy. "You made it out alive," she said, crossing her arms. "Enrique has no idea how close I am to destroying him. But I need your help. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about tearing down everything he's built." I showed her the documents and Clara's eyes widened in shock. "My God! You have everything." "Exactly. But I need to get this information to the right people, and I need to do it without raising suspicion." Clara knew people, former contacts who hated Enrique as much as we did. We built an information network. I sent copies of everything to investigative journalists, prosecutors, and even Enrique's rivals. I knew that in this rotten world, the truth alone wasn't enough, but truth combined with power was deadly. The following days were pure chaos. Headlines exposed Enrique's crimes. Leaked recordings of incriminating conversations, forged contracts, and connections to murders spread everywhere. Companies severed contracts with him. Politicians avoided him like a plague. But I knew he wouldn't fall without a fight. On the third day, I received a call from Enrique. I answered in silence. "Do you think you've won?" His voice was filled with rage. "This isn't over, Mariana. You have no idea who you're dealing with." I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. "No, Enrique. The one who didn't know who they were dealing with was you." And I hung up. But that wasn't enough. Enrique was still free, and that wasn't acceptable. He needed to feel everything he had put me through. I went after Eduardo, Enrique's personal lawyer. He had always been loyal, but he was also greedy. He knew too much and would stay quiet for the right price. "How much is Enrique paying you to stay silent?" I asked, sitting across from him. He looked at me with disdain. "Enough to ignore you. What if I double it?" I slid an envelope toward him filled with evidence of illegal transactions he was involved in. Eduardo paled. "Either you help me, or you fall with him." He gave in. With Eduardo's help, we froze Enrique's accounts, blocked his assets, and triggered hidden debts with old partners. His empire started to crumble piece by piece. But the final blow was still missing. I discovered where Enrique was hiding. In an isolated mansion surrounded by security. I knew I couldn't confront him directly, but he was alone, without allies. That's when I did the unthinkable. I contacted Vargas, one of Enrique's oldest rivals. A man just as ruthless as Enrique, but smart enough to recognize an opportunity. "I want to hand Enrique over to you with evidence. Everything." Vargas didn't refuse. Their war was old, and Enrique was now vulnerable. That same week, Enrique was captured by Vargas's men and handed over to the authorities. Not out of honor, but because Vargas wanted to erase any connection to him. Enrique was arrested, charged with money laundering, murder, and organized crime. At his trial, I saw him in handcuffs, worn down. The eyes that once intimidated me were now empty. For the first time, he wasn't in control. He was sentenced to life in prison. All his allies were either arrested or fled the country. Clara opened her own cybersecurity company with my financial support. She became a leader in the industry. Eduardo vanished after doing his part. I never heard from him again. I imagine he went into hiding before someone decided to silence him. And me? I invested part of the recovered money in foundations supporting women who, like me, had lived under the shadow of dangerous men. I rebuilt my life far from that past. Today, I wake up in peace, without fear, without shadows. Enrique rots in a cell. Powerless, penniless, and alone. I rebuilt everything and, most importantly, I won. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My wife got back from her so-called business trip and snuggled up to me, but I pulled away. I've been sick as hell a couple of days ago, and I still felt like a ghost. But my own wife didn't even give a damn about my pale face or the mountain of meds clattering on a nightstand. She picked up her phone to dial up that childhood friend of hers. "Hey, where you at? I'm in a crap mood. Come cheer me up." That prick on the other end had the balls to chuckle and say, "Didn't you just get back home? You want to see me again now?" She shot me this dead-eyed look while heading out the door, replying, I was this close to sleeping, but I guess I can't do that in my own damn bed tonight. I just sneered and called up my lawyer. Please get those divorce papers ready. Ellen and I have been dating for 4 years and married for 6. Every folks around us knew I worshipped her. Even when she told me she couldn't have kids, I still stayed with her. But as time passed, the way she treated me felt like she was this woman I didn't even recognize. She went from being all clingy to straight-up paranoid, believing what she wanted to believe. Whenever we had a little misunderstanding, she'd storm out of the house and run off to that jerk, Gareth McKinley. If I lost it and brought up divorce, my wife would get on her knees saying sorry, swearing she just wanted to mess with me and that nothing was happening between her and her friend. Her mom would back her up, saying I should stick it out. It was just my wife's health making her act all messed up. And all her friends, they'd swear she never even went to see Gareth. And like a goddamn fool, I forgave her. That was until a week ago. A buddy recommended me this OBGYN, so I went to see the doctor feeling like maybe things could turn around for me and my wife. Luckily, the doc said my wife's condition wasn't hopeless. I never cared much about having kids, but I thought, screw it. Maybe having a kid would chill her out a bit. On my way back, I stopped by Urban Basket to grab some groceries. It was just getting dark when I stepped out and, damned if I didn't see Ellen's car stopping across the road. My gut told me to take a closer look, and there she was sitting in the driver's seat. And right there, under the blinding headlights, my wife was kissing some guy torridly, like they were inseparable. The scene struck me like lightning and the groceries fell out of my grip. Vegetables and fruits rolled out everywhere. When the light turned green, some jerk honked, snapping my wife and her fling out of their little bubble. Ellen rolled down the window, cursing at the car behind them. Gareth, that son of a, just smirked, stroking my wife's hair. They didn't even notice me catching their affair. My wife's car just sped off right past me. I swear it felt like someone kicked my legs out from under me. The night air was cold, and the chill dug right into my bones, making me shudder uncontrollably. I don't remember how I got home, but that night I was burning up with a fever. I would have died if a buddy, worried 'cause he couldn't reach me, hadn't come and rushed me to the hospital. Turned out I'd suddenly developed acute pneumonia. When Ellen finally came back, she threw a suitcase down into the room. She smelled of some other dude's cologne. When she slipped under the comforter beside me, she didn't care enough to even notice my pale face or the meds littering the bedside table. I turned my head away from her and said, "I'm not feeling well tonight." She got out of bed, looking down at me. "Oh yeah? You just can't stand me now, right? Dang. It's not like I'm desperate for you anyway." Then she grabbed her phone and openly called that same damn number. "Hey, where you at? I'm in a crap mood. Come cheer me up." I could hear the bastard's damn laugh through the phone. "Didn't you just get back home? Want to see me again now? You really don't care if your useless husband gets mad." Ellen looked over at me with a mocking grin and laughed. "Well, he's a useless waste of space anyway. Who knows why he's even got the dang nerve to reject me?" She said it quiet enough that her other man on the line wouldn't catch it, but loud enough for me to hear every word. "What?" the bastard asked. "Nothing. Just saying I can't even sleep in my own damn bed." Ellen grinned as she hung up and gave me one last look before picking up her suitcase, and then she just walked right out. There was a time I would have chased her. I would have apologized and held her, no matter what she spewed. I would have appeased her with a gentle voice. But this time, when that door slammed shut, I didn't move a muscle. I just lay there in our bed, alone. God, I'm so damn fed up with all her bullshit. The next day, for the very first time, Ellen came back early. I was finishing up breakfast at the table when I heard the door, but I didn't bother to lift my head. She stood in front of me like she was expecting something. No breakfast set out for her like I used to do every damn morning. Her face yelled she was pissed as hell, and then she slammed her phone down on the table. "Go ahead, start your crap. Want to fight again?" She was bringing up that first time she ditched me to run to Gareth all mad. Back then, I was just as pissed. I didn't call her, didn't text her all night. The next morning, I rolled up to her mom's place with divorce papers in hand. Ellen came rushing back looking white as a sheet and dropped to her knees in front of me, bawling her eyes out. But then Mom's excited voice burst out before Ellen could say a damn word. "Oh, my son. Happy birthday. Baby, I meant to call you yesterday, but we were out in the fields all day. You ain't mad, right? Tell me, how did you and Ellen celebrate?" Ellen froze, guilt flashing across her face as she looked at me. Yeah, my wife forgot my birthday, but she sure as hell remembered to go make out with her other man right in front of me. I snatched the phone back and pressed it to my ear, plastering on this big fake grin. Nah, how could I be mad, Mom? You and Dad, you're the only ones who ever cared about me. If anyone's sorry here, it's me not being the son you deserve all these years. Hearing that, Mom quickly changed the subject, clearly worried I'd get upset. We kept talking 30 minutes, maybe. Not once did we bring up my wife's name. By the time I hung up, Ellen's face was all twisted up like she couldn't figure out what to do. Fine, fine. It's your birthday, so I'll let that money slide for now. But it's a loan, you hear me? You're damn lucky to have a generous wife like me, you know that. And about yesterday, well, you know that was your fault. If you just talked to me nicely, I wouldn't have left. I ignored her, just went back to my phone and started chatting with some old buddies. She lingered there like a ghost until she muttered, "Fine. I'll go buy a cake. Make something nice for dinner. All right? I'll make it up for you tonight." I watched until the door clicked shut behind her, and then I opened my chat box with my supervisor. "Hey Wesley, are you really planning on transferring to the branch? It's your hometown." "Sure. But what about living apart from your wife?" I shot back quickly, "Won't be a problem. She's about to be my ex-wife soon enough." The chat box showed she was typing, untyping, and typing again. Although it took her forever, she still sent a short reply, "All right. With you on the team, I'm sure the branch will make it." I checked the time, set my phone to silent, and crawled back under the covers. I was dead asleep. Right then, I heard this goddamn noise from the living room. My eyes barely even opened and my mind was barely awake when I felt these hands yanking me out of bed. It was Ellen. "Get your ass up. I invited my friends over for your birthday and you're here sleeping? Get in the damn kitchen." I dragged myself out to the living room. There were folks jammed in every corner, trashing the place with empty soda cups and pizza boxes. I swear I had never felt so enraged like this before. I clenched my fists but eventually kept my cool. I decided to save some face for my wife who invited them all. "Oh wow, didn't expect all of you to show up. All right then, how about I book us a table at a restaurant?" "Yeah, what? Nah bro, eating out's damn expensive. Besides, Ellen's always bragging about your cooking. Want a taste of that?" Gareth sprang up, that stupid grin plastered on his face like he knew something I didn't. And there's Ellen, frowning and pulling on my arm. "You just sent $2,800 to your brother and now you want to blow more cash eating out? What, you think we're born rich? Come on, you can cook just fine. I even got all you need. Just make something quick." Ellen buying groceries? That was enough to make my stomach turn. So I bolted to the kitchen and threw the door open. Eels, lobsters, frogs, Jesus Christ. I don't even know how the hell a couple of them got behind the damn stove. I took a deep breath and quickly shut the door. I knew it'd be like this. She can't even mop the floor right ever since we got married. And she thinks she can damn buy groceries? And then there was Gareth standing right behind me. In a voice that only the two of us could hear, he arrogantly said, "Poor thing, cooking for all these folks on your day. Damn, did you know for my birthday, Ellen actually rented out a suite at the King's Bay for 3 good days? Guess you're not the favorite. Huh, Wesley." Before I could lift my fist, Ellen stepped up right behind him. "What are you two gossiping about? Hey babe, why aren't you cooking yet? My friends are starving." I wanted to tell her to shove her friends right out the damn door. But then I thought of that bastard's arrogant face last week. "We're missing some spices. I'll run out and grab them real quick." "What? I'll go then. It's getting late. You still got 2 sets of meals to cook, you know?" She really thought I'd cook a feast for her dumbass friends and then whip up dinner for us too. I ground my teeth together and then I just shot back, "What the hell do you even know about kitchen stuff? I'll be back in a flash." Finally, that shut her up. "I'll go with you, bro." Gareth really meant to tag along. I didn't say no, of course, but I made sure my finger secretly pressed the recorder in my coat pocket. Ellen trailed us to the door, throwing these worried glances at me, then at Gareth. Her lips moved slightly. Gareth chuckled and gave her a little shove back. Chill, Ellen. Who's being all clingy now? Who is he even calling clingy? Gareth closed the door as we hit the stairs. The bastard suddenly stuck out his arm right in my face. That morning, Ellen finally noticed that something was different about me. This wasn't like the other times when I'd threatened to leave but ended up backing down, apologizing, or trying to make peace. No, this time there was no going back. She walked into the kitchen, silently watching me, waiting for me to say something first. I just sat there, eyes fixed on my coffee, feeling her stare. She expected me to start an argument to give her the opening she always used to twist things around. But I remained still, as if surrounded by a glass wall that kept her words and venom away. After a prolonged silence, Ellen finally spoke, her voice sharp with impatience. So you're just going to sit there? No words? You really think this little act of yours is going to scare me? I took a deep breath, still focused on my coffee, feeling the irritation growing in her tone. It wasn't just impatience. It was discomfort, as if my silence was getting under her skin, throwing her off the control she thought she had over me. Silence was my answer, and it filled the room, stretching into every corner of the kitchen where for years I had made her breakfast as a sign of my love. Now each small act like that felt like a bitter reminder of all I'd sacrificed for someone who clearly didn't value any of it. She kept staring at me, probably waiting for me to look up, to give her some predictable response she could manipulate. But I stayed motionless like a wall of stone, and I could see it was throwing her off. You know, Wesley, this silent treatment is pathetic, she said, voice dripping with contempt. You think you can scare me with this silent act? I know exactly what you're trying to do. For the first time, I felt a smile creeping onto my face. It wasn't the usual smile she associated with my kind, apologetic side. No, this was a cold, ironic smile, one that carried the weight of all the times I'd been stupid enough to fall for her games. I looked up, finally meeting her gaze, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She hadn't expected this from me. That fear disappeared quickly, though, as she straightened her shoulders, determined to hold her ground. Don't worry, Ellen, I replied calmly. This time there won't be any fights or drama. I just want peace. That's what I'm after now. I saw her expression shift, and for a moment something that resembled concern crossed her face. Maybe for the first time she understood that she was losing the control she thought she'd always had over me. The truth was, she'd lost that control the moment I saw her with Gareth, indifferent and guilt-free right in that parking lot. She tried to mask her insecurity with a sarcastic laugh, as if my behavior didn't bother her. Peace, she said, voice dripping with mockery. Good luck finding that without me. You won't last a month on your own, Wesley. I was the only person who ever truly cared about you. It was the first time I truly laughed in a long time. Care about me? I asked, feeling the laughter bubble up. You think sneaking off to meet another man while your husband's in the hospital is caring? Or maybe caring is dragging me through the mud in front of your friends, making me cook while you entertain them? She narrowed her eyes, visibly annoyed, but I could see that my calmness was rattling her. Before, I would have tried to ease the tension. Now I wanted her to feel it, to understand that I was done. Go on and think you're still in control, Ellen. Laugh it up if you want, but I'm already out of this marriage. At least in here. I pointed to my head. And soon it'll be official. She stared at me for a long moment before opening her mouth to retort, but the doorbell interrupted us. I knew who it was. The lawyer here with the first set of divorce papers ready for her to sign. Ellen's eyes darted to the door, and I saw a hint of panic in her face, like she was beginning to realize that this wasn't just an empty threat. I stood up calmly, walking to the door, opening it for the lawyer, who greeted me with a serious nod. Ellen, for the first time in years, looked genuinely lost, as if she had no idea what to say or do. Please, Ellen, have a seat, I said, pulling a chair out for her. She hesitated but eventually sat down with the papers in front of her. I took a deep breath. "This is just the beginning, Ellen," I said calmly. "I want a divorce and I'm moving on. I'm done giving chances to someone who only wants to see me broken. From now on, I'm taking care of myself." She stayed silent for a moment, but then her expression hardened. "Oh really? You think you could just get rid of me that easily? You don't even know what I'm capable of." Her threat didn't surprise me. I knew Ellen would fight, knew she'd try to make the divorce as painful as possible. But I was ready. Years of manipulation and deceit had taught me never to underestimate her. I knew she'd likely go after everything she could, from property to any dignity I had left. But I was prepared to face whatever came my way to be rid of her. As she got up to leave, she gave me one last hateful look. "This isn't over, Wesley," she said, like she was warning me about a storm on the horizon. "Yeah, Ellen," I replied with a cold smile. "It's not over. But I walked out of this war a long time ago." That last argument with Ellen, her arrogant stance as if she'd always come out on top, left a clear impression on me. I needed to put an end to this, and it wasn't just a paper-thin end with a divorce. I wanted to make it clear to her and everyone around us who she really was. I knew that trying for one final heart-to-heart talk with her wouldn't work. No, this required something she wouldn't expect, something that would make her feel a bit of what I'd been through. And with that, I decided on my approach. My first decision was simple. I stopped covering up her lies. No more playing the loyal, quiet husband while she used Gareth as some close friend she was just helping out. The first chance came when my mother casually asked why Ellen hadn't joined us for a family lunch. In the past, I would have made up an excuse, saying she was busy with work or some engagement, but this time I was direct. "To be honest, Mom, Ellen has other plans with her friend Gareth, who she's been meeting up with over the weekends," I replied without holding back. Silence fell over the table. My dad stopped eating. My mom looked at me wide-eyed, and my brother just stared, waiting for more. I laid it all out without drama, explaining everything I had found out and how I'd been holding on to it in silence for years, trying to salvage a marriage that to her was just a front. I wasn't looking for sympathy or support, but simply putting an end to the image of us as the perfect couple. The news spread faster than I'd anticipated. My mom, who'd always defended Ellen, was deeply disappointed, and soon mutual friends started reaching out. Some to offer support, others to understand what had happened. No one knew about Gareth until now, and with everyone finally aware of the other side, Ellen started feeling the impact. At family gatherings, she was met with cold stares, and among friends, people no longer held her in the same regard. But I didn't stop there. Ellen was extremely concerned with how people saw her, especially at work where she loved to present herself as the dedicated wife and reliable professional. I knew the truth about our divorce would ruin that image, so I decided to have a straightforward talk with her boss, a conservative man, a close family friend, and someone who'd always respect me. I met him at a coffee shop and got straight to the point. "I know this conversation might feel out of place, but you deserve to know why Ellen and I are divorcing." He listened without interrupting, his face shifting from disbelief to disappointment. I didn't have to say much, just mentioned that Ellen had been spending her weekends with a friend and that it had been happening for some time. He thanked me and, though he didn't say anything further, I saw in his eyes that he'd take it seriously. I knew it wouldn't be long before he had a conversation with her. For Ellen, the fallout came swiftly. A week later, she stormed into the house furious, accusing me of ruining her life. I simply stayed silent as she poured out the anger that, deep down, was a reflection of her own actions. "You told everyone, didn't you? Even my boss? Now he's looking at me like I'm irresponsible, and it's all because of you," she hissed, voice loaded with rage. I took a deep breath, staying calm, and finally replied, "Ellen, you did this to yourself. I just let people see who you really are. Nobody would judge you if you'd been honest with me, but you chose to betray my trust. And now that everyone knows you want to blame someone, blame yourself." She stormed out, slamming the door, and I didn't stop her. I knew that every slammed door was another link breaking between us, and for the first time I was more than okay with that. Ellen tried to hold on to her social standing, but as days passed, it became clear she was losing her grip. At gatherings and family events, she became the target of whispers and side glances. Many of our mutual friends started avoiding her, while others who knew what I'd been through showed me their support. Even her mother, who used to dismiss the issues, now avoided talking to me out of embarrassment. Within weeks, Ellen was isolated, without the network she'd always used to mask her actions. The final blow came when she tried to confront me in public at a company event where all our friends were present. It was the annual firm gathering, and many friends of hers who now knew everything were also there. Ellen approached me, probably hoping to intimidate or paint me as the bad guy, but I was prepared. "So that's it? You destroy my life and now you're here playing the saint?" she said, her voice controlled but her face flushed with anger. I kept my tone firm but calm, ensuring everyone nearby could hear. "I only told the truth, Ellen. I thought everyone here deserved to know who they were dealing with. Maybe you should start dealing with the consequences of your own choices." She tried to respond, but before she could get a word out, one of her colleagues, a friend of mine, stepped up and, unafraid to share his opinion, said loudly, "Ellen, I used to admire you, but now I see Wesley was right to move on. It's sad you played with his feelings." She left, visibly shaken, and I knew that this time she wouldn't be able to cover up her lies or change the narrative. I was honest, and in the end, everyone around us could see the real Ellen. When the event ended, I felt an enormous weight lifted off my shoulders. The divorce process continued and Ellen tried to contest some of the assets, but without her social backing and with her image damaged, her options were limited. In the end, my revenge was simple: exposing the truth, raw and unfiltered. And somehow, that turned out to be the most devastating blow for someone who always lived by appearances. I left the event feeling lighter, knowing that this time it was a true ending. Now, after all this time since the divorce, I can finally look back with a sense of peace I never thought I'd find. It was a long, painful process, but each small victory along the way reassured me that walking away from that relationship was the best decision I could have made. I remember how I felt waking up in that empty house in those first days after the separation. It was strange, sometimes even frightening, but over time that loneliness transformed into freedom. I rediscovered the value of taking care of myself, doing what made me happy without the constant weight of distrust and frustration that Ellen had brought into my life. At first, everything around me reminded me of our former life. People whispered. Friends and family would ask how I was dealing with everything. But gradually I let go of the need to explain what had happened. Ellen, on the other hand, faced the harsher consequences. I'd hear from mutual friends that she was trying to rebuild her life, but people no longer saw her as that perfect woman she'd always portrayed. Her image was tarnished, and she couldn't hide behind the devoted wife mask anymore. Without the respect she once demanded, Ellen started to isolate herself. No one wanted to be associated with someone who had deceived and manipulated so openly. That, for her, was a punishment much greater than anything I could have imagined. Life went on, and after a few months I met someone new. It wasn't planned at all. Honestly, I was so focused on myself that love was the last thing on my mind. But then I met Julia on a work trip to a city I didn't know. She was unlike anyone I'd ever met. Julia was calm, with a genuine smile and an effortless way about her that made me feel at ease, like I hadn't felt in years. She showed me that I didn't have to be so hard on myself, that I could trust and open up without fear. During our first few dates, I shared a bit about what I'd been through, just touching on the surface. Julia listened patiently, without judgment and, more importantly, without making me feel like my past defined me. Over time, I found myself sharing more and more with her, even the parts that made me feel ashamed. She encouraged me to look forward, to think about the plans I wanted to make and the future I could build. Each conversation with her showed me that life could be lighter, that love didn't have to be a constant game of manipulation and sacrifice. Ellen, on the other hand, seemed to spiral downward. I'd heard through mutual friends that she was still with Gareth, but their relationship was far from the fairy tale she'd imagined. Over time, Gareth revealed himself to be the opposite of what she'd hoped for. Selfish and now entirely dependent on her emotionally and financially. I heard rumors that he treated their relationship like a personal victory, parading Ellen around almost like a trophy. Her few remaining friends told me that she begun to see Gareth wasn't truly committed, that his interest was just fleeting, and now that they were together, whatever thrill she once felt was gone. One day, I ran into an old mutual friend I hadn't seen in years. We talked about many things, and she eventually brought up how Ellen was doing. She told me that Ellen had tried to return to her old social circle, but people no longer treated her with the same respect. After a few months of rumors and suspicions, she even lost her job. Her reputation had crumbled so much that staying at work became unbearable. It was as if people had finally seen through the perfect facade she used to hide behind. It was clear that this was a consequence Ellen had never imagined. Facing the silent judgment, the way people distanced themselves from her, and the emptiness of a toxic relationship with Gareth where admiration and interest had long since faded. For someone like Ellen, who depended so much on appearances, living with everyone knowing the truth about who she really was turned out to be the most fitting punishment. With Julia, my life took a direction I hadn't anticipated. After a year together, we decided to move in, creating a home of our own slowly, without rushing, but with a sincerity I had come to deeply value. Julia showed me that happiness is in the small things. The daily conversations, the carefree laughter, and the mutual trust that doesn't need to be proven constantly. With her, I learned to open up without fear, to love easily, and most importantly, to value myself. Ellen is now a part of my past, and, though resentment followed me for a while, I no longer feel the need to think about her. I heard through acquaintances that she and Gareth had serious financial problems. He continued taking advantage of her until the debt became overwhelming, and she eventually had to sell the apartment they lived in. What she was left with was a tarnished image, a failed relationship, and the weight of choices that, deep down, were always hers. In some way, I found my peace. Today, I'm grateful for what I went through, because it led me here, to someone who truly understands and accepts me. Ellen, on the other hand, is still trapped in a world of illusions, slowly crumbling. And perhaps that's the truest form of revenge. Knowing I moved on, built a life of substance and fulfillment, while she's left with the life she always wanted. A life of appearances empty without anything real. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I'm Daniel, 41 years old, and I thought I had seen every kind of family drama life could throw at me. Divorces, stepfamilies, custody battles, you name it, but nothing prepared me for the wedding that turned into a quiet, calculated disaster. A disaster I didn't cause, but one I walked right into and eventually walked away from, holding my kids' hands as if I were rescuing them from a fire. The morning of the wedding, I was still feeling proud. I'd paid for the whole thing. The venue, catering, photographer, even the floral arrangements my stepmother insisted needed a touch of luxury. It was for my stepsister, Ava. She was 30, the kind of woman who'd call herself misunderstood but treat waiters like they were invisible. Still, she was my dad's stepdaughter, and when he passed away 3 years ago, I promised him I'd keep the family together. That's why I said yes when technically my stepmother, Carol, came to me 6 months ago and asked if I'd help make Ava's dream wedding happen. At the time, it didn't feel like a trap. Carol was crying, saying Ava had been through so much and that this was her fresh start. Her fiancé, Mark, seemed like a decent guy. Quiet, respectful, maybe a little awkward, but polite. So I agreed. I even told Carol, "Don't worry about paying me back. Just let's make sure Ava's happy." I thought it was a good deed, family helping family. Turns out it was like feeding a wolf and expecting gratitude. Everything was fine up until the week before the wedding. That's when Ava started acting entitled, for lack of a better word. I'd get messages like, "Daniel, I think we should swap the wine selection. Mark's family prefers imported." Or, "Can we change the seating chart? I don't want your kids in the front area. They might make noise during the vows." That one hit me wrong. My kids, Lucy and Evan, are 8 and 6, well-behaved, shy, and the kind of kids who whisper in libraries. Still, I brushed it off. I figured wedding stress makes everyone weird. But then came the rehearsal dinner. It was supposed to be a small event, nothing fancy, just the family's meeting before the big day. Ava arrived late, dressed like she was walking the red carpet, and didn't even look at me when she walked in. Carol followed her, all smiles, pretending nothing was off. Midway through dinner, Ava tapped her glass with a spoon and said, "I just want to thank everyone who helped make this possible, especially Mom and Mark's family, who have been so supportive." Then she stopped. No mention of me. No mention of who actually paid for it. Mark looked uncomfortable, but he didn't say anything. Neither did I. I wasn't going to demand credit like a child, but the omission stung. My wife, Emily, leaned over and whispered, "It's okay. Let her have her moment." I nodded, but that night in the car, I said, "You'd think paying for everything might warrant a thank you." Emily just sighed. Some people only see what they want to see. Then came the wedding day. We got to the venue early. It was an old vineyard, beautiful and sprawling, with sunlight pouring through the trees. I remember holding Lucy's hand as we walked toward the entrance, the sound of distant laughter echoing from the bridal suite. But as we reached the gate, I noticed something odd. A sign taped to the entrance. Big, bold letters. "Do not let these children in." Underneath were printed photos of my kids. Actual photos. I froze. For a moment, I thought it was a prank. Maybe some twisted inside joke. But then the security guard, a guy in a crisp black suit, stepped forward and said, "I'm sorry, sir. The bride gave strict instructions." I blinked at him. "Instructions to ban children?" He nodded awkwardly. "Just those children." Emily's jaw dropped. "What?" He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Sir, I don't want trouble. I just follow orders." I stared at the photos again. They were clearly taken from my Facebook. Lucy in her Halloween costume, Evan at the park. My stomach twisted. Someone had gone out of their way to make this personal. "Let me talk to Ava," I said, my voice shaking. The guard hesitated, then called someone on his earpiece. After a few seconds, Carol appeared. She looked flustered, holding a champagne flute. Her hair done up so tight I could almost hear it creak. "Daniel," she said in that performative, sugary tone she used whenever she was about to say something awful. "Please don't make a scene. Ava just wants a child-free ceremony. It's her day." I stared at her. Then why didn't she say that from the start? Why specifically ban my kids? She sighed, avoiding my eyes. "They just distract people. You know how Evan fidgets sometimes. Ava's nervous about everything being perfect. Please understand." Emily's voice was shaking now. "You could have told us before we drove an hour here." Carol shrugged helplessly. "You're overreacting." That word, overreacting, made something in me click. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just looked at my kids, then at my wife and said softly, "Let's go." We turned around and walked back to the car. No scene, no shouting, just the sound of gravel crunching beneath our shoes. Evan asked, "Dad, did we do something bad?" And my heart nearly broke. "No, buddy," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." Emily was silent the whole drive home, clutching Lucy's hand. I could feel the weight of it, the humiliation, the disbelief. Part of me wanted to call Ava right then and there to demand an explanation. But another part of me, the colder, quieter part, said, "No, let's see how this plays out." 2 hours later, I was sitting at our kitchen table, stirring my coffee in silence when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Daniel," a deep voice said. "This is Richard, Mark's father." I didn't know what to say. "Oh yes," he sighed, heavy and disappointed. "I don't know how to tell you this, but the wedding's off. My son just walked out. He said your stepsister crossed the line." My spoon froze mid-stir. "What do you mean, crossed a line?" There was a pause. "He found out about the sign and the Facebook photos. Apparently, Ava thought it would be funny to make a point about uninvited guests. My son didn't find it funny. For a moment, I just sat there, unable to process it. The wedding I'd paid for, the one that kicked my kids out, was over. And that's when the knock came at the door. I didn't move. I just kept stirring my coffee, the sound of the spoon tapping the cup steady and calm as Emily looked toward the hallway. "Daniel," she whispered, "do you think that's?" I smiled faintly. Let's find out. And when I opened the door, standing there, makeup smudged, hair ruined, dress wrinkled, was Ava herself. She didn't say a word at first, just stood there trembling, her eyes red and furious. "Daniel," she hissed. "What did you say to Mark's father?" And that's where things started to unravel faster than I could have imagined. I stood in the doorway, coffee mug in one hand, Ava in front of me looking like her entire world had collapsed. Her eyes were red, her mascara streaked like someone had dragged a paintbrush down her cheeks, and she was gripping the sides of her dress as if she was holding on to the last bit of dignity she had left. "Ava," I said slowly, "I didn't say anything to Mark's father. He called me." She blinked, confused. He said you told him about the sign, about the pictures. That's why Mark called off the wedding." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the sign you made? The one you taped at the entrance with photos of my kids you pulled off Facebook?" Her lip quivered. "That wasn't supposed to be a big deal, Daniel. It was a joke." "A joke?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, looking down. "More like a message. You always act like you're the perfect one, the one holding everything together. I just wanted to show you that you don't control everything, that you can't just throw money around and expect people to worship you for it." I let out a breath that came out somewhere between disbelief and a laugh. "You think I wanted anyone to worship me? Ava, I paid for your wedding because your mother begged me to. I was trying to do the right thing." She crossed her arms. "And now you've ruined everything. Mark's gone, everyone's gossiping, and Mom's losing her mind. They're saying I humiliated children, my own step-nephew and niece. Do you realize how this makes me look?" That was the first time it hit me how deep her delusion ran. This wasn't embarrassment because she realized she was wrong. It was fury because her image cracked. Emily appeared behind me, holding Lucy on her hip. "You humiliated yourself, Ava," she said sharply. "We didn't do anything to you." Ava's eyes darted to Emily, then to me. "I need you to fix this." I blinked. "Excuse me? You have to tell Mark's father it was all a misunderstanding. Say you overreacted, or that you—" "No." My voice came out flat, calm but final. "I'm not covering for you." She stared at me, stunned. "Daniel, please. Do you know what Evan said in the car?" I interrupted. "He asked if he did something bad. He's 6. He thought he was being punished. You did that to him. You made an innocent kid feel unwanted at an event I paid for." Her face crumpled for half a second, and for a moment, I thought she might actually apologize. But instead, she muttered, "You always make everything about you." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Wow, unreal." Ava straightened up, wiping her face roughly with her hand. "You'll regret this," she spat. "Mom's already furious. She said she's coming over. Tell her to bring a receipt," I said, closing the door. I thought that would be the end of it, but I should have known better. Carol doesn't go down quietly. Half an hour later, our driveway filled with the sound of tires screeching. I looked through the window and saw her. Perfectly pressed dress, pearls around her neck, that expression of righteous fury she wore like a badge. She didn't even knock, just barged in as if the house belonged to her. "Daniel," she barked. "What on earth have you done?" I didn't even bother standing up. "Hi, Carol. Coffee?" She froze at my tone. "Don't get smart with me. Ava is in tears. The guests are leaving. Do you realize what this has done to her reputation?" "Her reputation?" I repeated. "You mean the one she shredded herself?" She was stressed. Carol snapped. "You know how weddings are. And you? Oh, you just had to make a scene." "I didn't make a scene. I left quietly." "You humiliated her." "I humiliated her?" I asked, my voice rising just slightly. "She put a sign with photos of my kids telling people to keep them out." "Who does that, Carol?" She hesitated, then said something that almost made me laugh from sheer disbelief. "Maybe she overdid it, but you should have known better than to bring them. Weddings are for adults." Emily set her coffee cup down so hard the spoon clattered. "We were invited. You saw the RSVPs. The kids' names were on the cards." Carol waved her hand dismissively. Ava changed her mind. Oh, she changed her mind after I paid for everything, right? I said. Carol's face tightened. Don't make this about money, Daniel. That's petty. That was the moment something inside me finally cracked. You know what's petty? Asking me to fund a wedding and then turning it into a circus. You both begged me to help. I handled every invoice, every booking. You didn't even thank me. And now you're standing in my house blaming me for her tantrum. She crossed her arms. We're family. You're supposed to help without expecting recognition. Helping doesn't mean being a doormat, I said. Her lips pressed into a thin line. I see. So that's how it is now. You're cutting us off. I leaned back in my chair. If by cutting off you mean I won't be financing any more nonsense, then yes. Consider it official. Carol went pale like I'd slapped her. You can't. Daniel, this family has always relied on you. That's the problem, I interrupted quietly. You rely on me, but you never respect me. There was silence. You could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. Finally, Carol muttered, Ava's devastated. She lost her fiancé because of you. And when she picks herself up, she'll remember who turned her own family against her. I met her gaze, unblinking. If she thinks she lost her fiancé because I refused to lie for her, maybe she doesn't deserve him. Carol opened her mouth, but no words came out. After a moment, she just shook her head, turned around, and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. For a while, the house was quiet. Emily leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. You handled that better than I would have, she said softly. I rubbed my temples. You think it's over? Knowing them? She said. Not a chance. And she was right, because that night, just as I was putting the kids to bed, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo, a picture of me at the venue standing by the sign looking stunned. Underneath, the caption read, People will know who you really are. Ava's doing, no doubt. But what she didn't realize was that Mark's father had already called me again that evening, and what he said next changed everything. He wanted to meet privately to discuss something about the money, something Ava and Carol clearly didn't know I was about to do. I met Mark's father the next afternoon at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. It was one of those old-fashioned places that still smelled faintly of roasted beans and wood polish, where conversations seemed to disappear into the hum of espresso machines. I walked in wearing a plain jacket, trying to keep things low-key. He was already there, a tall man with silver hair and a posture that radiated old-school dignity. His name was Richard, and when he stood to shake my hand, I could tell he wasn't the type to waste words. Daniel, he said with a firm grip. Thank you for coming. Of course, I said, sitting down. You mentioned something about the wedding money. He nodded and took a sip of coffee before speaking. I'll be direct with you. My son told me everything about the sign, about what your stepsister did. He's deeply embarrassed, but he's also angry. Not at you. That's a relief, I said dryly. Richard's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. He told me you covered most of the expenses. Venue, catering, the works. I nodded. Everything except the dress, as far as I know. He leaned forward. Did they ever pay you back? I shook my head. It wasn't a loan. Carol said she couldn't afford much and I didn't want her to feel pressured. I figured I'd take the loss and keep the peace. He tapped his fingers against the table thoughtfully. Then you deserve to know something. Mark found some documents in Ava's wedding binder when he was packing his things. Bank transfers, vendor receipts, invoices that were supposed to be under her name, but were instead copied with your signature. My stomach tightened. Copied? He nodded. Forged. She used your name to secure a few last-minute upgrades. A second catering package, premium wine, and the string quartet, all billed directly under you. When the venue requested payment this morning, they sent the invoice to her address in your name. I stared at him, processing it. I'd agreed to pay for most of the wedding, but I'd already settled my share weeks ago. Anything she added afterward, that was on her. But now my name was on the hook. Richard leaned back. I thought you'd want to know before it got worse. I can help you sort this out if you'd like. I nodded slowly, my mind already spinning. Thank you. I appreciate that. He looked at me for a long moment. You're a decent man, Daniel. You tried to do the right thing. But people like your stepmother and her daughter, they see kindness as weakness. Mark's learning that the hard way, too. I sighed. You're not wrong. When we parted ways, he shook my hand again and said, if you ever need help setting the record straight, you'll have my full support. The moment I got home, I went through my files. Receipts, email threads, payment confirmations. Everything was in order on my end. I'd paid my portion directly to the vendors with clear documentation. But the new charges Richard mentioned weren't there. Then I checked my inbox, and there it was, an email from the venue with the subject line. Final invoice, Daniel Harris. Wedding payment outstanding. It wasn't just the invoice. Attached was a scanned contract. My signature at the bottom, clean and crisp, except for one problem. I'd never signed that version. The date was changed, the numbers inflated, and my initials were slightly off. Emily came into the room as I stared at the screen. What's wrong? I turned the laptop toward her. Apparently, I bought $12,000 worth of upgrades I never agreed to. Her jaw dropped. You're kidding. I wish. Do you think Ava? Yes, I said, cutting her off gently. She did. Emily folded her arms. You have proof. Not yet, but I will. And that's when I decided I was done playing the quiet, reasonable one. I printed out every legitimate receipt I had, every message, every payment confirmation. Then I drove to the venue in person. The manager, a polite woman named Elise, met me in her office. I'm so sorry about the confusion, Mr. Harris, she said. The bride told us you'd be covering the additional costs. She told you? I repeated. Or she signed for me? Elise hesitated. She sent a revised document by email. We assumed it was you. The signature matched. Can I see that file? She hesitated again, then nodded and turned her monitor toward me. My signature stared back at me from the screen, perfectly replicated, except I spotted the difference immediately. The tail on the D in my name looped the wrong way. Tiny, subtle detail. Most people wouldn't notice, but I did. Elise, I said calmly. I didn't sign this. This is a forgery. Her eyes widened. Oh my goodness, Mr. Harris. I had no idea. I raised a hand. It's okay. I'm not blaming you, but I'll need a copy of everything she sent. She nodded, printing out the documents without question. I thanked her and left quietly, my pulse steady but my thoughts boiling. By the time I got home, it was past sunset. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the dishwasher. I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at the papers spread out before me. Forgery, fraud, humiliation. All because I tried to be generous. And just as I was putting the papers into a folder, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Ava herself. Mark's family is saying horrible things about me. You need to fix this. You're making me look like a criminal. I stared at the screen, almost laughing at the irony. I typed back. If you forge my name, that's not something I can fix. Her reply came within seconds. You wouldn't dare do anything. We're family. And that's when I realized she still didn't get it. She thought I'd stay silent just like always. She thought family meant I'd let her walk over me again. But she didn't know that by morning I'd be on the phone with my lawyer. And what she really didn't know was that I wasn't the only one who'd seen that sign at the wedding. Someone else had taken pictures and sent them to Mark's family group chat. That meant witnesses, evidence. And something tells me the story wasn't going to end with just embarrassment for Ava. Because when family burns bridges, they never expect the smoke to reach them. And in this case, I was ready to light a match. The next morning, I was at my lawyer's office by 9 sharp. Her name was Maya. Sharp as a blade and calm as stone. The kind of lawyer who didn't just handle problems, but dismantled them. I laid the forged papers out on her desk along with every receipt and message I had saved. She took her time reading through everything, occasionally underlining something or scribbling notes. When she finally looked up, she said, "This isn't just petty family drama anymore. This is fraud, and whoever sent this document in your name could be held liable for damages. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't want to destroy anyone, Maya. I just want this to stop. Her expression softened slightly. Sometimes the only way to make it stop is to hold them accountable. Over the next few days, she contacted the vendors and confirmed what I already suspected. Ava had been using my name as a blank check. Multiple upgrade orders were made under my supposed authorization. She even sent emails pretending to be me. My lawyer filed a report, not to press immediate charges, but to establish a legal record, a foundation in case Ava tried to pull anything else. The funny part was, I didn't even have to expose her myself. The truth has a way of unraveling when people start trying to control the narrative. Mark, as it turned out, hadn't gone far. He was staying with his parents, trying to make sense of the chaos. One evening, I got another call from Richard. "You'll want to know," he said. "Ava came to our house this morning. Oh, she wanted Mark back. Said she'd been set up. But she slipped up. Mentioned that she never thought you'd actually look at the invoices. She basically confessed." I exhaled slowly. "How did Mark take it?" Richard gave a quiet chuckle. "He said he couldn't marry someone who humiliates children and commits forgery in the same week." I didn't have a response to that, just silence. A few days later, Carol called me again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was quieter than usual. "Daniel, Ava is talking about suing you for defamation." I laughed. Actually laughed. Defamation for what? Exposing her own behavior. Carol's tone trembled. "You don't understand. She's spiraling. She says you ruined her life." I paused. "Carol, she ruined her own life. I just stopped cleaning up after her." There was a long silence before she whispered, "You sound just like your father." That stopped me for a moment. "You say that like it's an insult." She sighed, tired and brittle. "He always thought everything could be solved by walking away. But families don't heal like that, Daniel." I thought about my kids, about Evan asking if he'd done something wrong, about Lucy clutching Emily's hand on the drive home, and I said, "No, Carol, they don't heal by walking away. They heal by not pretending the wound doesn't exist." After that, she didn't call again. Weeks passed. I heard bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Ava moved back in with Carol. The vendors started calling her directly for payment, and Mark had officially annulled the marriage contract. She'd lost most of her deposits, and Mark's family wasn't entertaining any reconciliation. Then one evening, as I was finishing dinner with Emily and the kids, the doorbell rang. It was Richard again, holding a manila folder. "I wanted to give you this personally," he said. "Mark and I settled the final vendor bills that were tied to your name. We handled the rest privately. You're in the clear." I blinked. "You didn't have to." He shook his head. "You did more for that girl than her own family did. Consider this our way of setting things right." I thanked him, genuinely touched. He gave me a firm nod before leaving. And that was that. For a long time, I thought that was where it ended. But life has a strange way of looping back to unfinished business. 3 months later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from Carol. Inside was a photo. The same vineyard, the same venue, except empty. The handwritten note said, "You were right. We needed to see who she really was." Below that, another line, shaky and small. "Thank you for leaving when you did." I never responded. Some things don't need words. Nowadays, when I think about that wedding, I don't remember the humiliation or the betrayal. I remember the moment I chose silence over shouting. Walking away with my kids' hands in mine, calm and deliberate, while everyone else lost control. Because that day, Ava taught me something she'll never understand. Revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like peace, like quietly letting someone burn their own bridge while you watch from solid ground. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My name's Owen. I'm 34 now, but for a long time, I held on to this blurry image of childhood. One where everything felt a bit bigger, a bit warmer. Back then, there was one person I admired almost as much as my dad, maybe even more in some ways. My Uncle Ross, my dad's younger brother by 7 years. Ross had this confidence about him that made him feel like the star of whatever room he walked into. To a 9-year-old, he was larger than life. He wore leather jackets in summer, revved up a loud motorcycle just because, and handed me my first real watch on my 10th birthday. Not a plastic toy, but a silver Seiko, one of his own. "Champ," he said with a wink. "If you're going to keep time, keep it in style." I wore that watch every day for years, even after the strap broke and my mom tried to toss it. I kept it in my drawer, tucked beneath my socks, as if holding on to that one piece of him made the good memories real. He called me champ every time he saw me. Every holiday, every birthday, we'd play cards at the table while everyone else talked politics or work. He taught me to bluff with a straight face and told me stories about the art of negotiation like it was a secret passed down through generations. But something shifted when I got older. It started small. Missed birthdays, ignored texts. My dad would make excuses for him. "He's busy. You know how Ross is." But busy turned into absent, then distant, then downright cold. By the time I graduated college, I hadn't heard from him in 2 years. No call, no card. I still remember how excited I was when I sent out the wedding invitations. I mailed his by hand. I even wrote a personal note inside. "Wouldn't feel right getting married without my Uncle Ross there. Hope you can make it. Love, Champ." I waited. I told my then-fiancé to reserve a seat for him just in case. Day of the wedding, I checked my phone more times than I'd like to admit. Nothing. The ceremony ended. The reception was half over. And then finally a text, one line, "Busy with real family. Congrats, though." No name, no explanation. Just a sharp, cold message that took the air out of my lungs. For years, I convinced myself it didn't matter. People grow apart. Family drifts. I told myself he must have had a falling out with my dad. Or maybe he was going through something. I tried to be the bigger person and let it go. But it stayed with me. That Seiko stayed in my drawer, the watch that once made me feel chosen. I didn't even bother replying to that text. I didn't want to ask questions I didn't really want the answers to. Time passed. My career took off. I started as a junior project manager at a mid-sized construction firm and worked my way up. I didn't climb the ladder. I sprinted. I stayed late. I volunteered for the jobs nobody wanted. I asked questions, took notes, showed up to meetings 30 minutes early, and I listened. Really listened. By the time I was 31, I was the head of the entire regional division. And 3 months after that, I was promoted again, VP of Operations. That meant I had final say on hiring decisions, especially for positions in my branch. I never let the power get to me. I just kept my head down and did my job. Until 2 weeks ago. I was going through resumes late one evening, sipping a lukewarm coffee, when I saw the name Ross Thorne. My heart skipped. My hand hovered over the mouse for a second too long. I opened the file. It had to be a coincidence, right? But there it was. Full name, birth date, even a little headshot with that same smug, effortless smirk I remembered. Older now, grayer, thinner hair. But him. His cover letter was generic, too generic. He didn't know who he was applying to. He just listed the job title and a vague paragraph about looking for new opportunities in a stable company with upward mobility. I sat there frozen, rereading it. Something cracked inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just a flood of something old and unresolved. It wasn't even that he applied. It was that he clearly didn't recognize the name of the company or, worse, didn't think I'd be in any position to matter to him. I was probably still just Champ. That kid who used to hang on his every word. I looked through his employment history. The last few years were patchy. A series of short stints, gaps, a couple of layoffs, a modest recommendation from some outdated contact in Ohio. Not terrible, but not impressive. He was applying for a logistics coordinator role, mid-level, modest pay, just enough to keep a roof over your head. I stared at the screen, letting the weight of the moment settle. For 10 years, I'd lived with the quiet ache of being cast aside, the silent bitterness of realizing I wasn't real family. I'd buried it beneath promotions and deadlines, beneath holidays with people who did show up. And now, like some cosmic joke, here he was, unknowingly knocking on my door. I could have sent his file to HR. I could have let the system work it out. But I didn't. I moved his application into the priority folder, flagged it myself, and sent a note to my assistant. Schedule this interview. I'll take it personally. Thursday at 2 p.m. All week, I rehearsed what I might say. Should I let him talk first? See if he even recognized me? Should I act like a stranger, cold and professional, and make him earn every word? Or should I lay it all out the second he walks in? I felt like I was preparing for a performance I'd been writing for years. But underneath it all, part of me still hoped for something sincere. Maybe he'd apologize. Maybe he'd say he regretted missing the wedding. Maybe he'd call me champ again. Thursday came fast. I wore my sharpest suit, not out of vanity, but because I wanted to feel solid, untouchable. I asked my assistant to make sure the blinds were drawn and the room was quiet. At 1:58, I heard the knock, one short, one soft. I cleared my throat and said, "Come in." He opened the door slowly, like he wasn't sure he was in the right place. Our eyes met, a beat of silence. His brow furrowed, and then he squinted, confused, searching. "Owen." I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just nodded once and said, "Please have a seat." He looked like he'd seen a ghost. I gestured to the chair across from me, and he sat awkwardly, slowly. His hands trembled slightly as he smoothed out his resume on the table. "Wow," he finally said. "Didn't expect to see you here." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "Likewise." He laughed, trying to ease the tension. "Man, it's been what, 10 years? Almost to the day," I said, my voice cool. He looked at me again, eyes flickering with unease. "You've done well for yourself." "I worked for it," I said flatly. "Didn't have anyone to vouch for me." He nodded, the smile fading. "Right." There was a long pause. He glanced around the room, then back at me. "So, are you the hiring manager?" "I'm the vice president," I said. "And today, I'm the one conducting your interview." That was the moment he realized. His expression shifted, not fear, not yet, but something close. Regret, maybe. Embarrassment. "I didn't know this was your company," he said quickly. "I swear I wouldn't have." I held up a hand. "Let's start with your resume." He blinked, caught off guard. "We'll go through it," I said, calm and measured. "Just like we would with any other candidate." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay." I picked up his file and flipped to the first page. My voice was steady as I asked, "Tell me, Ross, how do you handle situations where someone you once dismissed turns out to be the person sitting across the table?" He opened his mouth, but before he could say a word, I leaned forward, folded my hands, and waited. The silence stretched. His mouth opened, then closed again, like his brain couldn't quite catch up to the moment. I watched it all flicker behind his eyes. Confusion giving way to recognition, then embarrassment, then that old thorn, arrogance, trying to claw its way back to the surface. He straightened a little in the chair and cleared his throat. I didn't mean to dismiss anyone. If I said something..." "You did," I interrupted. My voice wasn't raised, but it landed heavy. "You texted me on my wedding day, remember? Said you were busy with real family." He winced like I'd slapped him. "That was years ago. I wasn't in a good place, Owen. I was dealing with a lot at the time." "You didn't even call," I said quietly. "Didn't respond to the invitation. Not a word until that message. And not a word since. Until now." He leaned forward, suddenly all remorse and sincerity. I know. I messed up. Look, your father and I had our issues, and I guess I took it out on everyone. I was angry. I felt left out of a lot of things. And I don't know. I thought you'd be fine without me. That made me laugh, sharp and joyless. You thought I'd be fine. I was fine. I didn't need you, but that's not the point. You made me feel like I didn't matter. Like everything you said when I was a kid. The watch, the cards, the champ nickname was just noise. His face crumpled for a second, but then he forced a smile. "Owen, I came here to interview for a job. I didn't know you'd be sitting on the other side of the table. I'm not trying to dredge up the past. You don't get to decide that, I said, my tone sharper now. You didn't show up for the biggest day of my life. You didn't check in when my dad got sick. You didn't even reach out when he passed. And now you show up here like it's just another Tuesday. He blinked, clearly startled. Wait, your dad passed away? 2 years. That's how long it had been. 2 years since the funeral. 2 years since I gave a eulogy where I nearly said Uncle Ross's name before stopping myself. Jaw clenched. 2 years and not a single message from him. And now he sat here in front of me, acting like he genuinely didn't know. Or maybe he just hadn't cared enough to find out. Yes, I said. Pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed late. Gone in 6 months. His eyes dropped to the floor. I didn't know. No one told me. That's funny, I said. Because I sent the obituary link to the same number you used to text me that wedding day. No bounce back. No response either. He didn't respond. He just stared at the corner of my desk like it held the answer to a question he didn't know how to ask. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick. I thought about ending it there, closing his file and sending him out with a vague corporate excuse. But something in me wanted more than that. Not revenge exactly, just clarity. Or maybe closure. I flipped through his resume again and asked, "Why do you want this job?" He looked up, caught off guard by the question. "I'm serious," I continued. "Why here? Why now?" He hesitated, then finally said, "Because I need a reset. I've had some rough years. After the divorce, the last company folded. I've been trying to get back on my feet. And honestly, this place has a good reputation. I just thought maybe I could start over. A fresh start," I said softly. "That's a nice idea," he nodded. "Everyone deserves one." I closed the folder slowly. That's true. Everyone does deserve one. But starting over means acknowledging what came before. Owning it, not skipping it. He leaned forward again. "Owen, I'm sorry. I really am. I know I hurt you. I know I wasn't there when I should have been. I thought staying away was better than facing how much I'd already let you down." I let that sit for a moment. I looked at the man across from me. The man who once called me champ with pride, who taught me to bluff, who missed the most important moments of my adult life. And now he was here, suit wrinkled, hands clasped nervously, hoping for mercy from the kid he once forgot. "I don't need an apology," I said finally. "But I do need the truth. Why didn't you come to the wedding?" "Really?" His mouth opened, then shut again. "I'm not looking for pity," I added. "I just want to know." He exhaled slowly. "I was jealous. I know it sounds pathetic, but seeing you do everything right, the college degree, the relationship, the success, it made me feel small. I didn't know how to show up without feeling like a failure. That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting honesty, especially not that kind. And the truth is," he continued, "I didn't think you'd notice or care." "I noticed," I said quietly. "I waited." He nodded. "And I was wrong." I stood up, letting the moment breathe. He stayed seated, unsure of what to do. "So, what happens now?" I looked down at him, the man who once seemed so tall, so unshakable, and realized I wasn't the kid anymore. I had the power now, the authority, the final word. I walked to the window, pulled open the blinds slowly, and let the afternoon sun pour in. Then I turned back toward him, my expression unreadable, and said, "I'll let you know." He sat frozen in the chair like a man trying to decide if he'd just been given a second chance or handed a verdict in slow motion. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap, knuckles pale. I stayed standing, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor. I could feel the tension in the room, thick, brittle. Neither of us moved for what felt like an entire minute, maybe longer. Finally, he cleared his throat and said, "Thank you for at least considering it. I didn't expect—" Well, honestly, I didn't expect any of this. I didn't answer right away. I walked slowly back to my chair and sat down again, folding my hands on the desk in front of me. I studied him for a long moment, trying to figure out what was real and what was performance. Had he really changed? Was there regret in his voice? Or was he just desperate for a job? "You said you were jealous," I said eventually. That seeing me doing well made you feel small. But that doesn't explain everything. That doesn't explain cutting off contact. That doesn't explain 10 years of silence, or why you couldn't even pick up the phone when my father, your brother, was dying. His mouth twitched slightly. I was ashamed. I thought I'd burned the bridge, and by the time I wanted to reach out, it felt too late. So, I convinced myself that you were probably better off without me. No drama, no expectations. I leaned back in my chair, not breaking eye contact. You made that choice for me. I know, he said, and it was the wrong one. I sat quietly, letting his words linger. There was no dramatic violin swell, no teary-eyed monologue, just the sound of the air conditioning humming in the background and the weight of years between us. I could feel my own chest tightening, like some small part of me still clung to the hurt. The kid inside me wanted to scream, to ask him why he abandoned us, why he left my dad to die alone, why he'd gone from being the man I looked up to a stranger I had to interview like a temp hire. But the adult in me, the man I'd become, was quieter, calculating. I didn't want rage. I wanted resolution, and maybe just a little control. I reached into the drawer and pulled out something I hadn't touched in over a decade. The silver Seiko. The strap was frayed, the face slightly scratched, but it still ticked. I placed it on the desk between us without a word. His eyes widened. You kept this. He swallowed. Of course I do. I gave it to you when you turned 10. I said you were a champ. I said that you should always know what time it is if you want to stay ahead. I remember. I leaned forward, tapping the glass with my fingertip. Funny thing is, this watch kept ticking through everything. Even when the strap broke. Even when you disappeared. Even when I tried to pretend you didn't matter anymore. He stared at it like it was something sacred or maybe something cursed. You don't get to ask me for a clean slate, I said quietly. Not yet, but maybe you can earn it. He looked up at me. What do you mean? I pushed the resume back toward him and said, there's a short-term contract position in the warehouse. Not the role you applied for. Not even close. It's physical, early hours, hard work. You'll report to someone half your age, and I won't be checking in. He blinked, surprised. So, not the logistics coordinator position? No, I said flatly. That role is off the table. But if you want a foot in the door, if you're serious about starting over, you'll take what's offered and earn your way up like the rest of us. He nodded slowly. Okay, that's fair. It's not about fair, I said. It's about whether you can handle humility. There was another long pause. Then he reached for the watch, gently picking it up and turning it in his hands. I can't believe you kept this. I don't know why I did, I admitted. Maybe I thought you'd come back for it. Or for me. He looked like he might say something, but stopped himself. Instead, he placed the watch back on the desk and stood. If I get the warehouse job, I won't let you down. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I just said, we'll see. He walked to the door, hand on the handle. But before he left, he turned back and said, thank you. Even if this is all I ever get from you. This chance. Thank you. And then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the office quiet again. I sat there for a long time staring at the Seiko. Kept ticking as always, relentless, unchanged. But something in me had shifted. I didn't know if I'd ever fully forgive him. I didn't know if he deserved to be part of my life again. But for the first time in years, I felt something besides anger when I thought of Uncle Ross. And then my office phone rang. I picked it up, expecting a routine call, another site update, another vendor check-in. But instead, it was my assistant's voice, nervous. Hey, Owen, there's someone here. Says he's your cousin. Wants to talk to you urgently. My brow furrowed. Cousin? Yeah. Name's Jeremy. Says it's about Ross. Something important. I stared at the phone for a second too long, the quiet hum of the line filling my ear. Jeremy. That name hadn't crossed my mind in years. The last time I saw my cousin, I was maybe 15. He was younger than me by a couple of years. Ross's son from his first marriage, the one he barely talked about after the divorce. I remembered he used to be shy, always clinging to his mom's hand at family cookouts. Back then, Ross was still in our lives, loud, animated, the center of every joke. Jeremy had seemed like a shadow next to him. I hadn't thought about him in over a decade. And now he was in my lobby. "Send him in," I said slowly, setting the receiver back down. 2 minutes later, the door creaked open again. A tall, lean man stepped in, no more than 25. He had Ross's dark eyes, but everything else was quiet, reserved. He held himself like someone who wasn't used to taking up space. "Owen?" he asked, voice unsure. I stood. "Yeah, Jeremy, right?" He nodded and shut the door behind him. "Thanks for seeing me. I know this is weird." "You're not wrong," I said. "Sit." He eased into the chair Ross had just vacated and laced his fingers together, his gaze flicking briefly to the Seiko on my desk before snapping back to mine. "It's about my dad," he said, wasting no time. I didn't answer right away. I just waited. "He didn't tell you everything," Jeremy said. "He never tells anyone everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." He took a breath. 3 months ago, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Early stage, but it's progressing faster than the doctors expected. He's been hiding it from everyone. He's scared. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. Jeremy continued. "That job he applied for, it wasn't just about starting over. It was his last shot at stability, health insurance, routine. Something that gave him purpose while he still had control over his body." My throat tightened, but I kept my voice even. "Why didn't he just say that?" "Because he's Ross Thorne," Jeremy said bitterly. "He'd rather crawl through glass than admit he's vulnerable. He thought if he could get the job on his own merit, maybe earn your respect back quietly, it'd be less pathetic than asking for help." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My thoughts were spiraling too fast. Images of my uncle at family parties, full of life and energy, now colliding with this new version of him, deteriorating, hiding it. "I know he hurt you," Jeremy said gently. "He hurt me too. I barely saw him after the divorce. But the man you knew when you were 10, he wasn't faking that. He really did love you. He just broke somewhere along the way. And people like him don't know how to admit when they're shattered." I looked at Jeremy, really looked at him. There wasn't a trace of manipulation in his eyes. No angle, just the weary honesty of someone who had carried a secret too long. "Why tell me this now?" I asked. "Because he'd never tell you himself," Jeremy said. "And I couldn't sit back and watch him get crushed by his own pride. I figured you deserved to know the full story before making a decision." I nodded slowly. "All right, thanks for telling me." He stood, uncertain. "I'll go then." "No," I said. "Wait." I picked up the phone and dialed my assistant. "Hey, can you pull Ross Thorne's onboarding packet? Move him from the warehouse to internal logistics. Same pay grade, just different responsibilities. Have it ready by end of day." There was a pause on the other end. "Sure. Anything else?" "Yes. Add him to the company insurance policy immediately. Pre-existing condition clause or not, I'll handle the paperwork. Just get it moving." I hung up and looked back at Jeremy. He blinked. "You're giving him the job." "I'm giving him a chance," I said. "But it comes with conditions." Jeremy nodded. "He won't blow it." "He might," I said bluntly. "But I'd rather regret being decent than regret being cold." Jeremy gave a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." I handed him the Seiko from the desk. "Give this back to him. Tell him it still ticks. Even after everything." He took it carefully as if it were made of glass. "I will." He left without another word. A week later, Ross started the job. I didn't tell him I knew. I didn't mention Jeremy's visit. I just let him walk in with that same awkward stiffness I saw during the interview, wearing a slightly oversized company polo and holding a thermos that looked like it had been around since the 90s. He kept his head down, worked diligently, and didn't speak to me beyond a polite, "Good morning, sir." I watched from a distance. He didn't cut corners. He didn't complain. And he never once used my name to get out of anything. After 2 weeks, I called him into my office. He sat like a soldier at a hearing, spine straight, hands clasped. "You've been doing good work," I said. Your supervisor says you're organized, dependable, and quiet. He smiled faintly. Quiet is my specialty these days. I slid a folder across the desk. I'm moving you to supply chain coordination. More hours, better pay. Flexible schedule in case you need time off. He stared at the folder, then looked up. You know, don't you? I nodded. Jeremy told me. He looked away, eyes glassy. Of course he did. Kids got more integrity than I ever earned. I didn't promote you because of pity, I said. I did it because I'm tired of waiting for people to fix the past. I'd rather build something from what's left. He didn't answer, just stared down at his lap. And Ross. He looked up. I'm not your champ anymore, I said. I'm a man with his own name, his own life, and you're going to respect that if you want to stay in it. He nodded slowly. I understand. Good. Then we're done here. He stood, gathered the folder, and walked to the door. Just before he opened it, he turned back. I still think about that day at the park, he said softly. When I gave you the watch, you were so excited. Jumped up and down like it was the moon itself. I didn't reply. I know I can't undo what I did, but I'm glad the watch still ticks. And then he left. Over the next few months, things changed in small, quiet ways. Ross didn't try to wedge his way into my life. He didn't show up uninvited or act like everything was fine. He showed up to work early, stayed late. Sometimes I'd see him laughing with the warehouse crew, handing out protein bars, or helping someone lift a heavy crate. One afternoon, I walked past the break room and saw him showing someone how to shuffle a deck of cards with one hand. The exact trick he'd shown me when I was 10. He never called me champ again. Never even tried. But on my birthday, I found a small, neatly wrapped box on my desk. Inside was a new Seiko. Same model, same silver face. But this one had a new engraving on the back. Time doesn't heal everything, but it gives us a chance. RT. I kept both watches in my drawer after that. The old one and the new side by side. Sometimes, when the office was quiet, I'd take them out and listen to them tick. Not in perfect sync, but close enough. And maybe that was the point. Not perfect. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My name is Oliver, and I'm 33. I don't usually post on Reddit, but after what happened at my grandfather's will reading, I've been sitting on this story for a while. Not out of fear or guilt, just processing, I guess. You grow up thinking family means something. And then one day, you watch them tear each other apart over what's left of someone you actually loved. Someone they only remembered when it was convenient. My grandfather, Arthur, was my hero. The kind of man who didn't say much, but always showed up. When I was 8 and broke my leg falling off a skateboard, he was the one who stayed with me overnight in the hospital. When my dad walked out on us a year later, it was Grandpa Arthur who helped my mom keep the lights on. We moved into a small rental across town. And while the rest of the family lived comfortably on his dime, new boats, vacation homes, renovations, we got by barely. I think that's why he trusted us most. Because we never asked for anything. My mom is his youngest daughter. She doesn't talk much about her siblings, and when I was a kid, I didn't really understand why. I remember once asking why we never went to Aunt Vanessa's pool parties like my cousins. She just said, "Some invitations come with strings." At the time, I thought she meant we just weren't close. It wasn't until years later I realized the truth. They saw her as the charity case, the one who married a loser, had a problem child, and ended up dragging Arthur down with her. That was the story they told themselves. It made them feel better about bleeding him dry. Grandpa never said anything bad about them. Not once. But he did small things, quiet things that told me he knew. Like the way he'd only ever bring me, not my cousins, to his workshop where he carved those beautiful wooden clocks. Or how he insisted I be the one to fix his old record player instead of hiring someone. He'd say, "Some things you hand down with your own hands, not just money." I didn't realize how literal he meant that until after he got sick. Pancreatic cancer is cruel. It's like watching someone shrink into themselves while pretending they're not. When he was first diagnosed, the family chat lit up with empty sympathy. "Let us know if you need anything. Wishing you strength. We'll visit soon." And then silence. A few weeks later, I found out Uncle Greg had used Grandpa's name to close a real estate deal. Aunt Vanessa tried to get him to transfer the deed to the lake house to her before anything happens, just to be safe. It was disgusting. But Grandpa, he didn't get angry. He just smiled that quiet smile of his and said, "The truth comes out eventually. It always does." That's when he asked me to start helping with some things, his finances, the property records, even his voicemail. I thought he just wanted company. Looking back now, he was setting the stage. The last few weeks of his life, I spent nearly every day with him. We'd talk sometimes for hours. Other times, we just sat, the TV humming in the background. He asked a lot of questions about my work, my life, my plans. He even made me promise I'd fix up the workshop one day, turn it into something meaningful. I didn't understand why he kept bringing that up. Not until the final week, when he handed me a small envelope with a USB drive inside. "Don't open it yet," he said, his voice raspy. "There'll be a time when it makes sense. You'll know." I nodded. I didn't question it. Couldn't. My throat was already too tight. He passed 3 days later, peacefully in his sleep. My mom was with him. She held his hand until the nurses came. The funeral was polite, controlled. Aunt Vanessa cried loudly, which was ironic considering she hadn't seen him in months. My cousin Jamie, her son, posted a picture of the casket with some cheesy quote about legacy and family. Uncle Greg gave a speech about how Arthur was the glue of this family, even though he hadn't returned a single call during Grandpa's last month alive. I stayed silent. My mom stood beside me, her face unreadable. Then came the will reading. It was held in Grandpa's study, the one with the leather armchairs and the smell of pine and pipe tobacco that never quite faded. The lawyer, Mr. Pearson, was an old friend of Grandpa's. Sharp guy, serious. He didn't waste time with small talk. As soon as everyone sat down, he opened the folder and began reading. The first part was standard. Small bequests, donations to charities, a few personal items left to old friends. Then he got to the part everyone was waiting for. The big stuff. "To my daughter Vanessa," he read, "I leave the sum of $1, as a token of my affection and a reminder of the countless more you took without asking." The silence was instant. Aunt Vanessa let out a small laugh like she thought it was a joke. Mr. Pearson didn't even blink. "To my son-in-law Greg," he continued, "who knew how to ask for more, I leave the pleasure of earning something on his own for once." That's when the whispering started. My cousin Jamie leaned over to his sister and muttered something. My mom sat frozen. I stared straight ahead, my heart thudding in my chest. Mr. Pearson cleared his throat. "To my grandson Oliver." Everyone turned to look at me. "I leave the house, the lake property, the workshop, and the remainder of my estate to be used at his discretion without interference." The room exploded. "What?" Vanessa barked. "He barely even visited him. He wasn't there when Dad needed him." Greg shouted. "You mean when he needed help eating?" I said quietly. "Because I was the one cleaning up after him while you were in Barbados." They all started shouting at once. Accusations, curses, protests about fairness. And that's when Jamie, smug as ever, said, "You didn't even visit him in the hospital." I didn't respond. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the envelope Grandpa had given me. I slid the USB drive across the table toward Mr. Pearson. "He said this should be played today," I said calmly. "In front of everyone? What is it?" Aunt Vanessa sneered. "Some fake video you made?" Mr. Pearson stood, walked to the TV in the corner of the study, and plugged in the drive. I looked at my mom. She hadn't said a word the entire time. Her hands were folded in her lap, trembling slightly. Then the screen lit up. Grandpa's face appeared. He was in his chair by the window, sunlight casting lines across his face. He looked tired, but his voice was clear. "If you're watching this," he said, "then you've already heard the will. And judging by the noise, some of you aren't too happy. That's fine. I expected it." The room went quiet again. He leaned forward. "But before you say anything else, there's something I need you to know." He took a long breath in the video, his fingers curled over the armrests, knuckles pale, but his voice never wavered. I wasn't planning on making this, Grandpa said. Honestly, I thought I could just let the paperwork speak for itself. But then I heard about the little meeting Vanessa had last month. You remember that, don't you, sweetheart? The one at your house where you discussed how to nudge me into signing things while I was still coherent. Vanessa's face went red instantly. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but no sound came out. Jamie glanced at her, his smug grin gone. I might be old, Grandpa continued, but I'm not blind or deaf or stupid, and I certainly didn't forget the times I asked for a ride to the doctor and got told, "We're out of town. Sorry." Or when I mentioned I was feeling weak and the response was, "Maybe you should get someone to help you full-time." As if I wasn't surrounded by family who claimed to love me. Aunt Vanessa finally found her voice. This is edited. This is fake. Mr. Pearson turned to her, his expression stone cold. This video was recorded in my presence, dated, time-stamped, and witnessed. On screen, Grandpa let out a soft chuckle. But not everyone treated me like I was a burden. Not everyone came around just to ask for a favor or dangle some sob story about mortgage payments. Oliver, he came without asking. Sat with me, read to me, cleaned up after me. He didn't care about what I had. He cared about who I was. That's why I chose him. Uncle Greg leaned forward, his jaw tight. This is ridiculous. He never even liked being in the house. He hated the lake. This was all supposed to go to the family, not just one person. Grandpa must have anticipated that, too, because the video kept rolling with brutal precision. Greg, you always said I should modernize the will, make it easier to divide. You meant easier to take. You lied to me. You forged my name on a vehicle transfer 2 years ago. Remember that? You told me the DMV messed it up. I let it go. I shouldn't have. Greg's face went white. And Vanessa, Grandpa said, his eyes hard now. I know about the bank account in your name that you opened using my power of attorney signature. You transferred nearly 20 grand into it before I caught on. Claimed it was reimbursement for years of caregiving. I have the statements. Vanessa actually stood up. This is a setup, she snapped. This is insane. You can sit down, Mr. Pearson said. There's more. I watched as my grandfather's face softened slightly on the screen. As for the rest of you, I want to say this clearly. I didn't do this out of spite. I did it because I spent the last 2 years of my life watching my family treat my illness like an obstacle to their inheritance. The only person who never asked me for anything was the one I gave everything to. Then he turned his head and looked directly into the camera. Oliver, if they fight this, play them the second video. The screen went black. There was a long, dead silence. No one moved. My hands were flat on my thighs, damp with sweat. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my ears. Vanessa slowly sat back down. Her eyes were wild, flicking between me and the TV. What second video? Jamie asked, his voice cracking. I didn't answer. Mr. Pearson did. It's locked and secured. If necessary, it will be submitted in court along with medical records, legal documentation, and the signed witness reports. Court? Greg repeated. You think this will hold up in court? Mr. Pearson turned a page in his folder and said coolly, You're welcome to contest the will, but I should warn you. Mr. Caldwell retained an attorney months ago in anticipation. You'll find your legal options are limited. Vanessa laughed again, a strained, jittery sound. So what? Oliver gets everything? Just like that? No, I said finally. Not just like that. Everyone turned to look at me again. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I didn't ask for any of this, but Grandpa made his choice. And you know what? I spent months wondering why, wondering if I even deserved it, watching him fade and being unable to do anything. That haunts me. And while you were out throwing parties and buying vacation homes with his money, I was sitting beside his hospital bed holding a straw to his lips so he could sip water. So yeah, maybe I didn't visit him in the hospital the way you think I should have, because I lived in it. Jamie stood up, face flushed. You're just a loser with a hero complex. Better than a leech with a trust fund addiction, I said, standing too. You never cared about him. You just cared about what he could give you. No one spoke after that. The lawyer quietly gathered his papers. My mom still hadn't moved, just sat there quietly holding her hands together, watching everything unravel. I turned to her. You okay? She nodded slowly. I just didn't think he'd actually do it. I knew he talked about it, but he meant every word, I said. Mr. Pearson looked up. We're done here for today. I'll be sending the formal documentation to each party, and I suggest strongly that no one attempt to contact Mr. Caldwell unless you plan to do so with respect. They all glared at me as I walked to the door. I reached for the knob, then paused and looked back over my shoulder. Oh, I said. And about that second video? I haven't watched it yet, but I've got a feeling it's even worse for you than the first one. I walked out, but that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. Because what came next wasn't just the fallout. It was the real reason Grandpa recorded that second video and what he asked me to do with it. And that's where the real revenge begins. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the confrontation at the will reading, even after the shock, the accusations, the way they looked at me like I'd stolen something that never belonged to them in the first place, my mind wouldn't slow down. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, turning the events over and over like a coin in my hand. The house was silent except for the wind tapping against the shutters, and downstairs on my desk sat the USB drive. The second one. I still hadn't watched it. I didn't want to, if I'm being honest. Something about Grandpa's tone when he said, "If they fight this," stuck with me. Like he knew this would spiral. Like he anticipated them refusing to let go. And that meant whatever was in that second video, it was going to be ugly. The next morning, I got my answer. I opened my email and saw a message from Mr. Pearson. Oliver, I've just been informed that Greg and Vanessa have both hired legal counsel. They're filing an emergency motion to freeze asset transfers pending a formal contest of the will. Expect delays, and if you haven't already, review the contents of the second video immediately. We may need it sooner than expected. I stared at the screen, weight creeping into my throat. It hadn't even been 24 hours. They were already trying to rip it apart. I walked downstairs slowly, grabbed the USB drive from the drawer, and sat at my desk. My hand hovered over the mouse. For a long time, I just sat there, eyes locked on the folder labeled Oliver, only if contested. He titled it like a warning. I clicked. Inside was a single file. Final_message_part_2.mp4. I double-clicked. The screen lit up and there he was again. Grandpa sitting by the window in the same cardigan. Only this time, his expression was different, sharper, less sentimental. If you're watching this, he said, then the bloodsuckers did what I feared they would. I hoped it wouldn't come to this. I hoped they'd take their lumps and walk away. But I know my family better than that. He leaned forward. So here's what they don't know. He reached into a drawer on camera and pulled out a black leather folder. Slowly, deliberately, he held up document after document. Vanessa doesn't know that the lake property she always loved was technically purchased under a shell corporation I registered years ago, and that the ownership transfer to her name she begged for never actually happened. I humored her. Sure, let her sign blank forms, let her think she was getting what she wanted, but I never filed them. Legally, she has no claim. The deed remains under Caldwell Holdings LLC. You'll find the papers in the safe. He held up another file. Greg doesn't know that I revoked his power of attorney a full year ago. The bank account he's been using, it's under surveillance. The money he pulled, embezzlement, plain and simple. I didn't press charges at the time because I was tired. But you have full authority now. You can decide what happens next. He set the papers down and looked directly at me. I know this puts you in the center of it, Oliver. I wish I could spare you that, but they left me no choice. This family, your family, has become a machine for entitlement. I tried for years to fix it quietly, but now, let them squirm. Let them lie. And if they take it to court, you give the judge this video, and the copies I left with Pearson and the bank. He paused, then softened slightly. And if they come crawling, if they beg, listen with your heart, not your anger. I don't want them destroyed, but I do want them to understand. The screen faded to black. I sat there for a long time just breathing. The documents were real. I found the folder in the safe exactly where he said it would be. Inside were copies of ownership titles, notarized affidavits, and, most damning, bank statements linked to an account Greg had drained over the last 6 months. Over $38,000 withdrawn in a series of small transactions masked as caretaker reimbursements. He'd even written fake memos in the margins. He probably thought Grandpa never noticed. He thought wrong. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered. "Oliver," a clipped voice said. "This is Richard Lom. I represent Gregory Caldwell. We're requesting an informal negotiation before filing our claim. If possible, we'd like to avoid litigation." I didn't speak. "We believe there may have been confusion in your grandfather's final days. Emotional strain, cognitive decline. Understandable given the circumstances. My client is hoping for an equitable resolution." "You mean a buyout?" I said flatly. He chuckled. "I wouldn't call it that, but yes, an arrangement that avoids ugliness on both sides." I looked out the window at the maple tree swaying in the front yard. "Did Greg tell you he stole from the estate?" There was a pause. "I'm not aware of any such. I have the bank records. I have a notarized statement from the day Grandpa revoked his power of attorney. I have a video of Grandpa outlining every illegal move your client made. You want to go to court? Go ahead. Just know you're going to lose." Another pause, then a sigh. "May I speak candidly?" "No." I hung up. That evening, I got a knock at my front door. It was Jamie. He stood there in a puffy jacket, holding a 6-pack of cheap beer like he thought that would erase everything. His eyes darted past me like he expected someone else to be home. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't say anything. He shifted on his feet. "Look, man, I know they've been pushy, but we didn't mean to mess you over. Okay? It's just, this family's complicated. Grandpa always treated you like the golden child. You thought if you ignored him long enough, he'd still give you everything," I said. "You thought just showing up for the funeral was enough?" His jaw tightened. "I just want to make things right." I stared at him for a long time. Then I said, "Then go home. Tell your mom and your uncle to drop the suit. And tell them if they don't, I'm not just defending Grandpa's wishes. I'm going public." He blinked. "Public? I've got emails, texts, copies of everything. If they want to fight dirty, I'll show the world exactly who they are." He didn't respond. He just stood there for a second, then turned and walked back down the steps. But something in his expression told me it wasn't over. Not yet, because the next morning, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just one sentence typed in bold across the page. "You think you won, but he never told you everything." And beneath it was a photo of me as a child, sitting in Grandpa's workshop next to someone I didn't recognize. A boy, maybe 10 or 11. Same hair color as me, same sharp chin. Only I wasn't an only child, or so I'd always thought. And that's when everything shifted. For hours I stared at that photo. It was faded and curling at the corners, printed on old glossy paper, but it was real. I was there, probably no older than 7, sitting cross-legged on the workshop floor, clutching one of Grandpa's handmade wooden clocks with both hands. And next to me was a boy same age. His face was turned slightly toward the camera, but even with the blur, the resemblance was uncanny. Not just to me, but to Grandpa. That square jaw, the arched brows, the way his hand rested on my shoulder like he belonged there. I flipped the photo over. One thing was written on the back in Grandpa's careful cursive. Oliver and Simon. Summer '99. Simon. The name meant nothing to me. No childhood friend. No distant cousin. I'd never heard it before in my life. I pulled out every old family photo album I had. Nothing. Not even a hint of another boy. I called my mom. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." "Mom," I said, barely holding the phone to my ear. "Did I have a cousin named Simon?" Silence. "Mom." Her voice was soft, careful. "Where did you hear that name?" There was a photo of me and a boy in Grandpa's workshop. It says Oliver and Simon on the back. Another pause. A longer one. Then finally, she sighed. I was wondering when that would come up. You knew about him? I did, she said. But it wasn't my place to tell you. He wasn't your cousin. He was your half-brother. I froze. What? Your grandfather had a son long before you were born. Before even I was. It was the early 70s. He was young, barely 20, got a woman pregnant. Her name was Lorraine. They weren't married, and her family didn't approve. They moved away before the baby was born. Your grandfather lost contact. Years later, he found out Lorraine had passed. The boy Simon was in foster care by then. Grandpa tracked him down when Simon was maybe 8. Started visiting, helping quietly. He didn't tell the rest of the family. I leaned back in my chair, heart racing. Why didn't he ever tell me? He was ashamed, she said. Not of Simon, never of him, but of how much he'd missed. He didn't want to burden either of you. And then when you were born, he saw something in you. You reminded him of Simon. So he started bringing you two together just quietly, just as friends. You were too young to remember. So what happened to him? Her voice broke slightly. He passed away. In 2002. There was an accident. Car crash on the interstate. He was 14. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He passed away, I whispered. And Grandpa never talked about him again. He never stopped mourning him, she said. He kept a photo of Simon in his wallet until the day he passed. That boy. He was part of why Grandpa got so involved in your life. He couldn't save Simon, but he could love you. I sat there, letting it all settle in. I thought I knew everything there was to know about Grandpa. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized he had layers even we never saw. Regret, grief, secrets he carried like stones. Later that day, I went back into the study and opened the safe again. I didn't know what I was looking for, just that something else had to be there. And at the very bottom, beneath all the legal documents and titles, I found a sealed envelope. My name was on the front. I opened it. Inside was a letter. Oliver, if you're reading this, then everything else has already happened. The will, the videos, the outrage. I'm sorry you had to be the one to clean up my mess. But I trust you more than anyone. That trust was earned, not inherited. There's something I didn't include in the videos. Not because I wanted to keep it from you, but because I wanted you to know it when you were ready. You had a brother once. His name was Simon. He was my son. I failed him. Not in the end, but in the beginning. I wasn't there when he needed me most. I let shame and fear dictate my decisions. By the time I found him again, he was already worn down by a system that doesn't love its children. But you brought joy into his life. You don't remember, but he used to talk about you like you were the son. When's Ollie coming back? Can I show Ollie my drawing? You saved something in him, even if it was just for a while. After he passed away, I shut down. I let the family circle tighter and tighter around my money, hoping it would distract them. It did, but it also made me see how empty that circle had become. So, when I got sick, I started putting things in place, not just to protect what I had, but to protect you. Because you're the best of me and the best of him. Don't let them guilt you. Don't let them twist this. You didn't take anything from them. You just got back what they thought was already theirs. Love always, Grandpa. I cried when I read that. Not quiet tears either. Full, ugly sobs that shook my shoulders and stained the paper. I read the letter again and again until the words blurred. In the days that followed, the lawsuit collapsed. Once Mr. Pearson presented the full records, video testimony, and the paper trail, their attorneys advised them to settle. They signed the documents quietly, with forced smiles and bitter eyes. Vanessa tried to corner me in the parking lot afterward, all syrupy sweet. We just want what's fair, she said. I looked her in the eye and said, so did Grandpa. She didn't speak to me again. Greg vanished. Word got around that he sold his house and moved to Arizona. Jamie unfollowed me on every social platform and posted a vague quote about snakes in the family. And me? I stayed. I moved into the house. I cleaned up the workshop, restored the old clock tools, repaired the record player. I even found some of Simon's drawings in an old box, crayon sketches of birds and trees, and a rocket ship labeled Ali plus S's Space Adventure. I framed that one. One night, a few months later, I stood by the lake watching the moon reflect off the still water, and I thought about how everything could have gone so differently. How one man's silence, his quiet love, his secret pain, had shaped all of this. I thought about Simon and how I barely remembered him, but somehow still felt like he was part of me. And I thought about Grandpa, about his voice, his steadiness, his quiet revenge. He didn't just leave me a house. He left me the truth. And that was worth more than all their inheritance combined. Now on to the next story. Story 6. At Christmas, my sister's kid pointed at my son. Grandma says, "You're just the helps kid." Everyone laughed. I took my boy's hand and left. That night, I canceled the utility auto payments. At 8:06 a.m., my dad texted, "The lights are out. What did you do?" I replied, "Believe me, this is just the beginning. Last Christmas was the last time I played nice with my family. I used to think biting my tongue was the mature thing to do, especially for my son's sake. Keep things civil, keep the peace." But what happened that day changed everything. We had arrived early like always. Noah was helping my mom in the kitchen while I fixed the Wi-Fi in the guest room for the 5th time that year. My parents never paid attention to that stuff. I did it all quietly: Wi-Fi, computer upgrades, setting up my dad's new smart TV. I even filed their taxes last year when they didn't understand the new digital portal. But in my family, the more you do, the less you're respected. Somehow helpfulness is just expected of me, like it's built into my DNA. Melissa, on the other hand, could show up late, bring a store-bought pie, and my mom would act like she had just saved Christmas. So, by the time everyone sat down to eat, I already felt that tight knot in my chest that only family gatherings create. The table was packed. My mom had set out her best dishes, the ones she doesn't let anyone touch unless it's a holiday. Noah helped with all the placements. He's 9, but more polite and considerate than most adults I know. He doesn't interrupt. He says please and thank you, and he's always the first to offer help without being asked. Melissa strutted in nearly 40 minutes late with Suddy in a fur-lined coat, acting like they had just come from the Met Gala. Her husband trailed behind her with 2 iPads under his arm like they were some kind of peace offering. Suddy didn't even say hello. She walked in, scanned the room, and made a beeline for the cookies. Melissa just waved her hand and started complaining about how hard it is to find reliable house staff around the holidays. My parents lit up, actual smiles and energy, the kind they reserve for company or when they think someone can do something for them. I watched them bend over backward for Melissa, praising her new hairstyle, asking about her Instagram brand deals like they were a real job. Meanwhile, I was asked to please move my car out of the driveway so Melissa could park closer. The meal was quiet at first, except for Suddy's occasional humming while she scrolled on her tablet at the table. I asked her to put it away gently, and Melissa rolled her eyes like I was insane. Then mid-meal, Suddy dropped her fork and pointed at Noah. No warning, just clear as day. "Grandma says, you're just the helps kid." Everything stopped. I mean everything. The sound of chewing, the clinking of silverware. Even the holiday music in the background suddenly felt too loud. There was a long beat of silence, and then Melissa laughed. A short, sharp little laugh like it was the funniest thing in the world. My dad chuckled, too. My mom put her napkin to her mouth like she was hiding a smirk. Noah just looked at me. He didn't ask what she meant. He already understood. I stood up. I told Noah to grab his coat. No yelling, no drama, just done. We left without another word. No one followed us. No one called out. The door shut behind us like a chapter closing. When we got home, I tucked Noah in early. I told him none of it was true and that people who act that way are never really happy. He nodded, but I knew he'd carry that moment for years. I went downstairs, sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and logged into my bank accounts. Over the years, I had set up auto payments for all of my parents' utilities: electric, gas, water, trash, and even the cable. I had covered their property taxes twice without them even knowing because the letters came to my inbox, and not once did they say thank you. It was just expected. Like, I owed them something because I made more money and didn't need help raising my son alone. At 12:07 a.m., I canceled everything. At 8:06 the next morning, my dad texted, "The lights are out. What did you do?" I replied, "Believe me, this is just the beginning." After I sent that text, there was silence. Not a single call, not a question, not even a passive-aggressive emoji from my mom. I knew what they were doing. The cold shoulder. It's their favorite move when they don't know what else to do. They've used it on me since I was 16 and dared to say I didn't want to be a dentist like my dad. Ignore Janet and she'll come crawling back. Except this time I didn't. I took Noah out for pancakes the next morning. We picked out new books at the library and came home to build a cardboard robot he'd been dreaming up for weeks. I watched him laugh without looking over his shoulder. That was the moment I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. That's a different kind of power. But my parents weren't done. Not by a long shot. The next morning, my phone lit up with alerts from the utility companies. First the gas, then the electric. Failed payments. Account locked. I had changed all the login credentials before canceling. I wasn't sloppy about it. I knew my dad would try to fix it himself. What I didn't expect was that he'd try to re-add me as the payer without asking. The request came through my email with a message from the electric company. Your father, Charles, is requesting to make you a secondary account holder again. Approve or deny. I hit deny twice. Then I changed the account security question to something he'd never guess. That afternoon, Melissa sent me a group text, just me, her, and my mom. "This is childish. You embarrassed everyone. You need help." It was followed 2 minutes later by a screenshot of a Yelp review my mom had left under a burner name for the company I work for. It said I was emotionally unstable and not to be trusted with data. It had 1 star. I should have been shocked, but I wasn't. This is exactly who they become when they lose control. I didn't answer the text. I forwarded the review to my company's HR and flagged it as defamatory. They took care of it within the hour. At 7:04 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, it was a lawyer or someone trying very hard to sound like one. Said he was representing my parents. Said there were concerns about the well-being of the child. Said I was intentionally cutting off resources and emotionally isolating my son from his family. What they didn't know was that I record everything. Every email, every payment receipt. Every time they handed Noah a used toy on his birthday while showering Suddy with new gadgets. Every time they left him out of family photos. Every little jab Melissa made while my parents laughed along. All of it was documented, organized, and my actual lawyer, whom I called the next morning, was more than happy to start a file. I didn't respond to their threats. I let them spiral. Then came the next move, something I hadn't seen coming. I got a notification on my work laptop. Multiple failed login attempts from an IP address located 2 towns over. My password had held, but my security team flagged it anyway. I traced the IP through a connection I had at my internet provider. It was my parents' address. They were trying to get into my work accounts. I sat in my car in the garage and just stared at the steering wheel. This wasn't about a joke at dinner anymore. This was war. And they had just crossed the line from petty to dangerous. So I took the next step. I called the city zoning office and asked about the status of my parents' back deck. They'd built an extension last year without permits. I knew because I helped set up their outdoor speakers while my dad bragged about how much money they saved by skipping inspection. Turns out that kind of thing carries fines, big ones. That Friday morning at 6:18 a.m., I got another text from my dad. "We can't get into the garage. The opener's not working." I stared at it and remembered. I installed their garage opener system through my tech account, which I had just deactivated. I didn't answer. By noon, I had 4 voicemails. The last one from Melissa. "You're destroying this family. Suddy cried all morning. Noah is going to grow up alone." I played it back 3 times. Not once did she ask how Noah was doing now. Not once did she say she was sorry. That night, I ordered a new laptop for Noah. Not a kid version, an actual entry-level professional one. He'd asked me a few weeks ago if he could learn to code. "You're not growing up alone," I told him. "You're growing up free." The deck inspection was just the first ripple. Within a few days, a large orange stop work notice was slapped across the back of my parents' home. They'd ignored permit rules when they built their patio extension last summer. I remember because I was there when my dad laughed about it, saying inspectors were just bureaucrats with clipboards. Apparently, the city disagreed. Melissa wasted no time trying to spin the whole thing online. Her Instagram story showed the notice in dramatic zoom, while she talked about being targeted for having a nice life. She tagged random influencers and added hashtags like #unfairtreatment and #familyjealousy. I didn't even know what that last one was supposed to mean, but what really caught my attention was the comment section. People weren't buying it. Someone asked if she ever apologized to her nephew. Another said, "You've been living off your sister for years, haven't you?" Then came the letter from some cheap family attorney, probably a referral from one of Melissa's yoga friends. It claimed I was intentionally isolating my child and withholding essential financial support from elderly parents. The best line was that I had weaponized my income. They wanted a family court to intervene. I had already sent my lawyer everything. He told me not to worry. I sent back one neat, professional response. Please inform your client that future communication must be sent through legal counsel. Also see the attached documentation. The PDF I included was nearly 50 pages. Bank records, payment histories, screenshots of emails, texts, a breakdown of every utility I had paid over the last 6 years, birthday gifts I bought for Suddy that were passed off as coming from Melissa, and an email thread where my dad asked me to handle their tax mess, then told my mom I had nothing better to do. My lawyer called the next day. The other attorney had dropped the case within 24 hours. No retainer, no refund, no follow-up. But Melissa wasn't done. She never is. The next escalation hit fast. I got a call from Noah's school. Someone had tried to check him out early, claiming to be his aunt. Melissa. She told the front office I had given her permission. She even showed a fake text she had written herself in her notes app, hoping they wouldn't notice. They did. I left work and drove straight there. The principal met me in the lobby. Melissa was sitting with her legs crossed, smiling like nothing had happened. I told the school to put her on a permanent no-contact list. I didn't even look at her. I just asked for the paperwork and took Noah home. He never asked what happened. He just sat in the back seat holding his lunchbox a little tighter. That night, I posted one thing. A photo of Noah in his new hoodie holding his beginner coding book with his lopsided grin. The caption was short. He's not the helps kid. He's my kid and he's doing better than fine. By morning, it had over 3,000 shares. My inbox was full of teachers, old classmates, and strangers. People saying they wish they had stood up for their kids sooner. People who knew Melissa and my parents and had stayed quiet until now. 2 days later, Melissa deleted her Instagram. But I wasn't done. They forgot about the mortgage. About 4 years ago, during one of their panic phases about money, my parents nearly lost the house. They asked me to help temporarily. What I did instead was buy the loan from the small local lender they were working with. It was legal, it was in writing, and they signed it. They didn't even read the fine print. I took over the loan, made their payments, and technically became the lien holder. They hadn't made a single payment in 14 months. I checked. So, I sent a notice of delinquency. No threats, just numbers. The balance due, the months missed, and the clause they forgot they signed allowing the lien holder to reclaim the property in case of sustained default. At 6:41 p.m., my dad texted me, "You can't be serious." I didn't reply. 3 days passed after I sent the mortgage delinquency notice. I didn't hear a word. No texts, no calls, no uninvited drop-ins. The silence wasn't peace. It was strategy. I knew my parents. When they didn't yell, they planned. On the 4th morning, I found a letter jammed into my mailbox. No envelope, no stamp, just folded neatly like a napkin at one of my mother's over-decorated dinner parties. The handwriting was hers. Even after everything, she still managed to keep her penmanship perfect. It read like a speech she'd been rehearsing. She said they understood my frustration, that maybe there had been a misunderstanding, and that perhaps she and Dad had been insensitive to my situation as a single mother. Then, 2 lines later, she asked if I would temporarily reinstate the mortgage payments for Noah's sake. She wrote, "He deserves stability and grandparents. Don't let this hurt his future." The same woman who laughed when her granddaughter insulted my son was now using him as leverage. I didn't reply. That afternoon, I drove to their house not out of guilt, but because it was mine now and I wanted them to remember that. The back deck still had the city notice taped to the railing. The siding was starting to fade. The front yard looked uncut, which was ironic since I used to pay the landscaper. My mom opened the door like I was a neighbor dropping by for coffee. No mention of the letter. She smiled like it was a game. My dad was sitting at the kitchen table pretending to read something on his laptop. The house was strangely quiet. For the first time, it looked like what it was, a place on the edge of collapse. I placed the papers on the table. A formal notice to begin rental arrangements or vacate within 60 days. I wasn't evicting them yet, but if they wanted to stay, they'd have to pay like everyone else. Lease agreement, monthly invoices, penalties for late payments, all official, all documented. My dad exploded. He said I was acting like a stranger, that I was letting money replace blood. He shouted something about how I wouldn't even have a degree if it weren't for them. My mom stayed quiet, dabbing her eyes like someone in a bad soap opera. I told them the truth. I said I had paid for my own tuition, supported myself, and bailed them out more times than I could count. I reminded them that I didn't grow up with support. I grew up with expectations. I said this was the first time in my life I was being treated like an adult by my own parents because I had forced them to. They didn't respond. I walked out, but I didn't get far. The next day, something I truly didn't see coming happened. Melissa showed up at my office. My assistant buzzed me, said there was a woman in the lobby crying who said she was my sister. I almost told her to send her away, but curiosity got the better of me. Melissa was sitting on the couch in the waiting area, hair a mess, makeup half worn off. She didn't stand. She didn't even look me in the eye, just held out her phone with her banking app open. Balance $0. I stared at it. She said her husband had frozen their accounts after finding out she tried to take money from his business to handle a family emergency. She didn't say exactly what she told him, but it was enough for him to lock her out and file for separation. I asked where Suddy was. With his parents. They didn't want her hearing them fight anymore. Then Melissa said something I'd never heard from her. Not even when we were kids. I don't know where to go. I didn't say anything for a while. Then I offered to cover a hotel. 1 week, nothing else. Not for her, for Suddy. She nodded. On her way out, she turned and asked, "What do you want from us?" I told her flatly, "I want you to teach your daughter not to become you." She didn't argue. She just left. That night, I got a text from my dad. "What do we need to sign?" And then the next morning, something new. A call from Noah's school. A letter had been mailed in anonymously accusing me of neglect, of isolating Noah from his extended family and denying him developmental opportunities. I drove to the school immediately. They showed me the letter. The language was oddly formal, someone clearly trying to sound like a professional, but it was sloppy. They'd included a printed photo of Noah from my social media. I knew right then it wasn't from my parents. It was from someone worse. The letter was printed on generic paper. No return address, just typed out in a clumsy pseudo-professional tone, like someone had copied it from a parenting blog and added words like concerning behavior and emotional detachment. But the worst part was the photo. It was Noah sitting in our living room in his new hoodie, holding up the coding book I bought him, the one from the post I'd shared. I looked at the principal. She didn't say anything at first. She just handed me the envelope and said quietly, "We know this isn't real. We're required to report it to the district, but we're not pursuing anything. We just thought you should see it." I asked if they had cameras in the office. She said, "No one dropped it off. It came through the mail." I left holding that envelope like a bomb someone had tried to disguise as a letter. I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes before I called my lawyer. I told him everything, including the photo, the wording, the timing. He asked me one question, "Do you think it was Melissa?" I wanted to say yes, but no, this wasn't her style. She was reckless, loud. She liked to make scenes and then pretend she hadn't. This was different. That night, I went through everything every recent call, email, DM. I remembered Melissa saying something back when she showed up at my office about needing to handle a family emergency. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she didn't say our family. Took 2 days to confirm. It wasn't Melissa. It was her husband, David. He wasn't just freezing her out. He was trying to make me look unstable. He wanted to use the courts to keep Suddy full custody. And the fastest way to win custody is to prove the other parent's environment is toxic. So he went after the easiest target, me. I had become the narrative, the unstable aunt with a vendetta, the family divider. He was building a case behind the scenes, one step at a time. And that letter, that was the start. I met with my lawyer again and we got a protective order against David. I filed an official incident report with the school and the local police. I also went further, installed a new security system at my house, changed Noah's pickup password at school, and blocked every number that had ever come from David's office. But that wasn't enough. Not for me. I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name was Teresa. She used to be a paralegal at a firm I interned with right after college. She now worked for a family court investigator. I asked her if she could check into any pre-custody filings connected to David. She called back the next night. He'd already filed a motion for temporary custody. Claimed Melissa was mentally unstable and under the influence of a hostile sibling with unresolved trauma. His words. But here's the thing. He'd attached screenshots of my social media as part of his evidence. Only problem? He included doctored versions, photoshopped. He'd altered captions, changed dates. One of them showed Noah crying, except I had the original. He wasn't crying, he was laughing. I had the video time-stamped, metadata intact. I smiled for the first time in a week. I gave everything to my lawyer and waited. A week later, David's custody motion was dismissed with prejudice. Melissa didn't even show up to the hearing. But that's not what surprised me. What did was that 3 days later, she showed up at my door with Suddy. No makeup, no posing, just her and her daughter with a suitcase. She asked if they could stay for a while. Said David kicked them out. Said she didn't have anywhere else. Noah was upstairs doing homework. He didn't even know she was there. I let her in. I didn't do it for her. I did it for the girl behind her, Suddy, who for the first time didn't look smug or spoiled. Just small. Melissa stayed quiet while I made tea. She stood in the kitchen wringing her hands. Then she whispered something I never thought I'd hear from her. I think I've ruined everything. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it. The cracks. He was right. I told her she and Suddy could sleep in the guest room. Nothing more. No promises, no reunions, and she'd follow my rules or she'd be out by morning. She agreed. But that night something happened. Suddy knocked on my door after dinner. Just me and her in the hallway. She looked at the floor and said, "I'm sorry for what I said about Noah." And then, almost whispering, "I didn't even understand it. Grandma told me to say it." Suddy's apology was quiet. No tears, no dramatic pause, just the soft truth of a child realizing she'd been used. I didn't hug her. I didn't tell her it was okay. I just nodded and said, "Thank you." Then I closed the door and sat in the silence, letting that single sentence rearrange every memory I had of my parents. It was never about favoritism. It was control, programming, making sure someone in the family was always beneath them. Melissa didn't become Melissa on her own. She was built, and now her daughter was being unbuilt right in front of my eyes. The next morning, I made extra pancakes. Suddy came down first. She sat quietly, said, "Please and thank you." Noah watched her like she was a hologram. At one point, she asked if he'd teach her how to use his coding software. He looked at me confused. I shrugged. "Your choice," I said. He said, "Yes." Melissa kept out of the way that week. She did the dishes, took out the trash, picked up Suddy from school when I couldn't. It was like living with a quiet stranger. She didn't complain once. Not even when she overheard me on the phone finalizing the lease agreement for our parents. I knew she was listening, standing just outside the hallway. I said the amount clearly. I said it was non-negotiable and I didn't care. On the last day of the month, my parents came over. They'd asked to meet in person. I said yes, mostly out of curiosity. I didn't tell Melissa they were coming. She wasn't home anyway. She'd taken Suddy to the library. My mom was the first one through the door. She looked tired, like someone trying to wear dignity as a disguise. My dad followed, holding a folder. For once, they didn't start with small talk. My dad handed me the signed lease agreement. He said they'd pay on time, that they understood the terms, and that they didn't want to lose the house. My mom placed a small box on the table. Inside were photos of me and Noah from birthdays, school plays, things I didn't know they even had. Then my mom said, "We want to apologize to both of you." I waited. She took out an envelope. Inside were letters, one to me, one to Noah. I didn't open them. Instead, I asked one question. "Did you really tell Suddy to say that?" My mom didn't speak. My dad looked away. That was all I needed. I told them they could stay for now. But this wasn't forgiveness. This wasn't a reunion. It was a lease, a boundary, a contract, and if they broke it, financially or otherwise, it would be over. They left without another word. A week later, Melissa found a part-time job. She said she wanted to try something on her own. She started cooking dinners. Suddy stopped using the tablet. She and Noah worked on a little project together, a simple app that tracks school assignments. Then something happened I didn't expect. It was Suddy's birthday. Melissa asked if she could throw a small thing at my place. Nothing big, just a cake and a few kids from school. I agreed reluctantly. What I didn't expect was what came with it. My parents showed up on time. Quiet. No gifts for Melissa. No over-the-top entrance. But they had something for Noah. A new laptop. A real one. Not some afterthought with his name engraved on the back. Noah opened it slowly. He looked at me unsure. I nodded once. He looked at them and said, "Thanks." Then he turned back to Suddy and showed her the game he built. For the first time, they watched him. Not as the helps kid, not as a footnote, but as someone becoming something they couldn't ignore. That night, when the house was quiet and the guests had gone, Noah handed me the envelope my mom had written him. He hadn't opened it. "Do you want me to read it?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not yet." I placed it in the drawer. Some things didn't need closure right away. Respect wasn't something you gave because of blood. It was earned, fought for, and protected. And for the first time, my son had it. Now on to the next story. Story 7. At my brother's engagement dinner, I pulled out a card, a fully paid photographer, a venue deposit, and $5,000 to get started. His fiancée smiled, then whispered loud enough for the table, "Wow, he's really trying to matter again." I slipped the card back into my coat, stood up and said, "Let me try less." 10 minutes later, the venue called her directly. Date canceled, deposit gone, just like their rent. I had just handed them a gold envelope. Inside was everything. A fully paid wedding photographer, one of the best in the state. Confirmation of the venue deposit for a place Riley had practically drooled over on Instagram, and a personal check from me for $5,000. Not a loan, a gift. Tyler took it first and just sort of blinked like it hadn't registered. Then he passed it to her like it was mail he didn't ask for. She pulled everything out, skimmed through the receipts, and held up the check. "Well," she said, holding it between two fingers like it was a used napkin. "He's really trying to matter again." Nobody at the table laughed, but nobody said anything either. Not my parents, who hadn't worked in years because I pay all their bills every month, including the second mortgage they quietly added when Tyler needed help starting his supplement business that died after 6 weeks. Not Tyler, who once called me at 3 a.m. crying after he maxed out his last credit card on equipment for a podcast that never aired a single episode. Not even Riley's parents, who were sitting across the table, smiling like the moment hadn't even happened. I reached over, took the envelope out of her hand, and slid it back into my coat pocket. "Let me try less," I said. Then I got up and left. I didn't make a scene. I didn't throw a fit. I walked out of that restaurant like I was leaving a dentist appointment. Calm, quiet, done. In the car, I just sat for a bit watching my phone buzz. 1 missed call, then 2. Then a message from the venue confirming the cancellation and reminding me the deposit was non-refundable. Good. I didn't expect the fallout to be instant. I knew them well enough to know that Tyler would still be smiling, trying to shrug it off. Riley would be fuming, already texting someone about how I freaked out over a joke. My mom would be whispering something about how I've always been sensitive. My dad would be checking the bill to make sure no one ordered anything extra before I left. But I also knew something they didn't. I was done. They'd crossed a line that had been years in the making. It didn't start with the envelope. It started when I was 16 and got into my first choice college, and my mom told me not to rub it in because Tyler hadn't even applied. It continued when I started my business and they said it was risky, but then sent me Tyler's resume a year later. It was a million little slights, digs, and silent moments where I was useful, but never seen. They'd think I was being dramatic. They always do. They'd realize what it meant when the rent didn't get paid next month, when the gas bill went overdue, when the phone calls started going to voicemail, when my mom's card got declined at the grocery store and the bank told her the automatic transfers had stopped. That card I took back wasn't just a gift. It was a warning, and they didn't listen. The first 2 days after the dinner were quiet. Too quiet, really. I didn't hear from my parents or from Tyler. Not even a sarcastic emoji from Riley. It was like they all decided to go into radio silence at the same time, which only meant one thing. They were talking to each other, just not to me. I didn't mind. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't calculating how to fix someone else's mess. I wasn't budgeting someone else's bills or reading passive-aggressive texts asking for small favors. I worked, I slept, I worked again and ordered Thai twice. It was almost peaceful. Then came day 3. I answered the unknown number out of reflex. It was my mom. She didn't ask how I was, and she didn't start with anything resembling an apology. She just launched into it. Why would you cancel the venue? You knew how much Riley loved it. I said. She made it clear she didn't love anything I did. She went quiet for a second. Then, like clockwork, you didn't have to take it so personally. It was just a comment. She was joking. I asked her if she laughed. She didn't answer. I asked if Tyler laughed. Still nothing. I said, you all sat there and watched her take a shot at me after I gave them something none of you could afford, and not one of you said a word. She said, John, you're punishing everyone over one moment. That pissed me off more than Riley's comment ever could. So I said it. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm stepping away from people who only value me when I'm handing out cash. She said, that's not true. I said, when's the last time you called me just to talk? She didn't even try to come up with a date. She just said, we're your family. We always thought you knew we were proud of you. I hung up. I didn't even feel guilty about it. I felt clean. 2 days later, Tyler texted, you really canceled the venue over some dumb drama? Whatever. We'll figure it out without you. Don't bother coming. I stared at that message for a good minute. No apology, no explanation. Just the same entitlement I'd seen from him since we were kids. Like I was the one ruining something instead of refusing to keep pretending. I didn't reply. Then I started hearing things. My mom posted some cryptic status on Facebook about disappointments coming from the most unexpected places. My aunt texted me asking what happened and why I wasn't going to the wedding. I told her to ask my parents. She said, they said you refused to help because you don't like Riley. And there it was. The version of the story they were running with. That I had bailed on my own brother's wedding out of spite. That I was jealous. That I didn't approve of the woman he loved. Not that I had been insulted at a dinner after offering a gift worth more than their entire wedding budget. Not that they let it happen. Not that they watched. I started pulling back even more. I cut the auto transfers to my parents. I canceled the Amex card they used for groceries. I removed myself from the family phone plan. No explanation, no warning, just gone. They didn't call right away. Pride, I guess. But eventually the silence broke. My dad left a voicemail. I didn't pick up, but I listened to it. You've made your point, John. I hope you're happy. You ruined the wedding and humiliated us. You abandoned your family over a little comment. You're acting like a traitor to your own blood. That word traitor stuck with me. He said it like I'd switched sides in a war, but I hadn't chosen sides. I just stopped playing the game. The wedding happened a week later. A backyard ceremony with folding chairs. My parents' garage had been cleared out to make room for a rented dance floor. I saw it all on Facebook. They looked happy, smiling. My seat was empty. Not one word from anyone except Riley's father. 2 days after the wedding, I got a text from him. "John, I don't know what really happened, but I saw your envelope at dinner. I saw what was in it. Just wanted you to know some of us noticed. Hope you're doing okay." I stared at that message for a long time because it meant that out of everyone, the one person who owed me nothing was the only one who actually saw me. It didn't take long. About 2 weeks after the wedding, my mom called again. This time it was about the electric bill. She said it had tripled and asked if I could just cover it this month. I told her I had removed all automatic payments. She paused, probably hoping I was bluffing. Then she asked me why I was doing this. I reminded her they called me a traitor. She told me, "That was just your father being emotional." I told her I wasn't interested in how emotional anyone was unless they were finally apologizing. She sighed and said something about pride and forgiveness and how families go through things. I told her forgiveness requires accountability. Then I hung up. Next came Tyler. He texted me a screenshot of his bank account. $23.47. No context, just the screenshot. A few hours later, another message. "Can you spot me for rent? Riley's boutique is slow this month and our landlord's on our ass. I'll pay you back." That made me laugh. Tyler has never paid me back for anything. Not the car, not the laptop, not the emergency flights, nothing. I used to tell myself it didn't matter, that I was helping my brother get on his feet. I just never realized he never planned to stand on them. I didn't reply. A few days later, my parents showed up at my apartment. I live in a secure building, so they had to wait outside and call from the buzzer. I watched them from my window for a minute before answering. I let them in. Part of me wanted to see how far they were willing to go. My dad did most of the talking. He told me they were worried about Tyler, that he was struggling, that Riley had taken on debt for the wedding, and they were barely holding it together. I asked how any of that was my responsibility. My mom said, "Because we're your family." That line again. I asked them, "What does that mean when being family only works one way?" They looked at me like I was speaking another language. I said I didn't mind helping before. I really didn't. I'd paid for things without complaint. But once they made it clear that my presence and my respect meant less than keeping Riley happy, well, that changed the math. Then my dad said something that caught me off guard. He said, "We told Riley's family that you were struggling with mental health issues. That's why you weren't at the wedding." We had to say something. I just blinked at him. I didn't even ask why. I already knew. They needed a story that made them look innocent. She said it would be better if people didn't know what really happened. My mom added, like it was a favor to me, "You know how people talk." That was it for me. I told them to leave. As they got up, my mom said, "You're going to regret cutting off your family." I said, "I'm not cutting off my family. I'm cutting off the people who betrayed me. If you find any family still left under that, let me know." After they left, I sat down and tried to feel something. Anger, maybe? Grief? But there was nothing. Just a strange kind of relief. That weekend, Riley's father called me. Not a text, a full call. He said, "I heard what they told people about your mental health. I'm sorry." I thanked him. He said, "You didn't deserve that. I don't know you well, John, but I can see you were trying to do something generous." They twisted that, Riley included. Then he said, "You're not the bad guy in this story. Don't let them rewrite it that way." I didn't say much, but those words stayed with me. They still try, by the way, the messages, the missed calls, Tyler asking for help, my parents trying to talk things out. But the truth is, once you see people clearly, you can't unsee them. By week 4, the calls had slowed, but the manipulation picked up in other forms. My dad emailed me a spreadsheet titled, "Family Budget Breakdown." It had all their expenses listed, complete with dates and totals, and a column labeled John next to every overdue bill. I didn't respond. Then Tyler emailed me something else. A PDF titled, Business Proposal. It was a sloppy pitch for a fitness app. He wanted me to invest $15,000 for a 30% stake. He said it would repair the trust between us and help him build something real. I skimmed through it. It was mostly buzzwords, stolen screenshots from other apps, and a vague claim that Riley would handle branding. What got me wasn't the desperation. It was the fact that he called it trust. Like me funding another dead idea was what trust meant in our family. That week, I was at a late meeting with a client when I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. Then another. Then a message popped up from unknown. Subject: thought you should know. Attached was a photo, grainy, clearly taken with a phone from behind a window. It was Tyler standing in my parents' driveway arguing with someone. Based on the angle, it looked like Riley's mom. His hands were thrown up. She was pointing at him. In the background, you could see the backyard tent from the wedding, half collapsed and still sitting there weeks later. No caption, no explanation. Another message followed 10 minutes later. He's burning bridges too fast. Your silence is louder than their noise. Watch closely. No name. I don't know why, but it unsettled me. Not in a scared way. More like someone else had been paying attention this whole time. That weekend, I ran into Riley's younger sister, Emily, at the grocery store. She'd always been the quiet one. Smarter than the rest of them and not afraid to show it. She stopped me in the frozen aisle and said, "They're falling apart without your money. Tyler and Riley are fighting daily. Your parents are acting like victims, but no one's buying it." I asked her what made her tell me. She said, "Because I watched what happened at dinner. I saw you walk out. I saw her smirk. And I saw how your parents just sat there. That was messed up." Then she said something that stuck. "People don't forget who stays quiet or who walks away with dignity." It wasn't much, but it gave me a strange kind of closure. Not because I wanted Riley's family to like me, but because it confirmed what I already suspected. People were starting to see the truth. And that's when the really strange thing happened. I got a notification on LinkedIn, a profile visit. Riley. It was the first digital fingerprint she'd left directly since the dinner. No message, just a view. The next day, Tyler texted me again. "Riley's talking about moving out. Says I've changed. We're drowning here, man. I know you're mad, but don't let this destroy everything." Everything? What exactly was he trying to preserve? The next day, my mom messaged me a photo of her and my dad at a diner with the caption, "Miss you. Wish you were here. It's not the same without you." But I'd seen the timestamp on the photo. It wasn't from that day. It was from months ago. They were recycling moments now, pretending everything was still intact. But it wasn't. And I wasn't coming back. Not this time. It was mid-April when Tyler showed up at my office. I hadn't seen him in person since the engagement dinner. He looked thinner, less put together, hoodie, basketball shorts, flip-flops. No appointment, just walked into the lobby and asked for me by name. My assistant buzzed my line and said, "There's a guy here says he's your brother." I told her to send him up. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe part of me still hoped he'd show up with a real apology or at least with some self-awareness. He didn't. He slouched into my office, flopped into a chair, and before he said a word, he pulled out his phone and showed me a picture of their apartment, or what used to be their apartment. Most of the furniture was gone. A few boxes on the floor. Riley's vanity overturned in the background. "She left," he said. "Packed up last night. Went to her parents' place. Said I was a loser and that you poisoned everyone against us." I didn't say anything. He just kept going. "She took the dog, man. I didn't even know they had a dog." Then he hit me with it. "You win. Okay, you got what you wanted. Everyone sees I'm nothing without you." I almost laughed. Like this was a competition. Like I'd been gunning for some twisted moment of satisfaction. I told him I hadn't won anything. I just stopped fixing everything he broke. That's when he got angry, started pacing, said I was being cold. Said he was my brother, that I used to be different. I asked him, "When was the last time you cared about me that didn't involve money?" He didn't answer, so I kept going. "Was it when you asked me to cover your tuition but forgot my birthday that year? Or when you needed help with rent, but never called to see how I was doing when I worked through Christmas. Or was it the dinner where I gave you a gift most people would cry over, and your fiancé humiliated me in front of everyone? He sat down, quiet. Then, softer, he said, Mom and Dad are losing it. They said they might have to sell the house. I nodded. They said you'd never let that happen. I didn't respond. He looked at me for a long time, then said, You really going to let them lose everything? I said, They already did. He left without saying goodbye. That night, my mom called. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, she sent me a photo of my childhood bedroom. Empty, stripped of everything. Under it, the message, We'll be out by the end of the month. Hope you're happy. That one hit harder than I expected. Not because they were moving, but because they still thought this was about revenge. I opened a bottle of wine, sat down, and stared at that photo. They weren't losing the house because of me. They were losing the house because they spent years counting on someone they refused to respect. And now the math finally caught up to them. I got another email that night. Subject line, They're spiraling. No message, just another photo. This time it was Riley in a parking lot arguing with her mom. Different location, different day. Whoever was sending these wasn't just watching, they were close. I clicked reply. Typed just one word. Who? No response. Not yet. Took 4 days to get a reply. The email came late, past midnight. No subject line this time. Just a single sentence. I saw what they did to you, and I knew no one else was going to hold them accountable. Still no name. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Not because I was scared, but because it felt like a confirmation that someone else, somewhere in the mess of it all, had been watching closely enough to understand. I didn't know who they were. Maybe a friend of Riley's family. Maybe someone who'd worked the wedding. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The damage had already been done. A week later, I found out my parents had moved into a rental 30 minutes away. Smaller house, no yard, definitely no guest room. My dad had taken a part-time job at a hardware store. My mom had picked up bookkeeping for a friend's cleaning company. For the first time in years, they were working again. Tyler moved back in with them. Riley had officially left him. I saw it on social media. New last name gone. Photos wiped. New boyfriend tagged in a story where she was laughing at a rooftop bar. I didn't feel bad for him. Not anymore. He tried calling again. Left a voicemail that started with, I know I messed up, and ended with, but I'm still your brother. I deleted it. Then came the final act. Riley's family hosted a dinner. Not a party, just a quiet, small thing, apparently to smooth things over. They invited my parents and Tyler. I wasn't invited, but Emily sent me a message anyway. Just so you know, they're still trying to make you look bad. But my dad shut it down. Told them flat out that what happened at the engagement dinner was disgusting. Said they embarrassed themselves, not you. Mom agreed. Tyler walked out. She added, You're not the villain. We all saw who was. That message, that was everything. Because it meant that even if I had lost my own family, I hadn't lost the truth. A week after that, my mom called again. Her number popped up, and I stared at it for a while before declining. Then she sent a text. Your father's health is declining. We're not asking for money. Just don't let this be permanent. I didn't respond, because I had tried for years to make it temporary, to be the bigger person, to be the fixer, the wallet, the safe option. They chose to mock me when I offered them everything. They stood behind Riley. Then they stood behind Tyler. Then they stood behind each other. But never once behind me. Now all that remained was the silence they earned. And for once, it was finally enough. I still work too much. Still haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. But I'm calmer, quieter. My phone buzzes less. No one's asking for favors. I've started seeing someone. She knows the story, every detail. She said, It sounds like you lost something big. I told her, No. I stopped feeding something small. She smiled. And for the first time in a long time, I did too. Update. Hey again. It's been a bit since I posted the story about what happened with my brother, Riley, and the whole mess around their wedding. I figured things had settled, and honestly, they had. But then something strange happened last week. I got a check in the mail. No return address, no note, just a plain envelope, one of those cheap off-white ones you get in bulk. Inside, a cashier's check made out to me for $8,200 exactly. At first, I thought it was a scam or a mistake. I've had clients pay me weirdly before, but never like this. I didn't recognize the handwriting on the envelope either. Looked rushed. All caps. I almost tossed it, but then I noticed the weird number. 8,200. Not 8,000. Not 8,500. Specific. Too specific to be random. So I started thinking. That's when I remembered the wedding venue. The deposit I put down was $5,000. The photographer was $2,000. The extra $1,200. That was part of the check I gave them for whatever you need to get started. They never paid me back. No one ever even acknowledged that I took it back. Not once. So, either someone was trying to clear their conscience or someone else decided to make it right. There was no bank info. No trace. I called the bank listed on the check and asked where it came from. They said it was purchased in cash at a local branch. That's all they could tell me. I don't think it was Tyler. If he had that kind of money, I'd have gotten 10 new texts by now begging for more. I don't think it was my parents either. They're still renting, still scraping, and I haven't heard from them in weeks. But I have a guess. Emily. She hasn't said anything. I didn't reach out, but she was the only one who knew every detail. The only one who saw the receipts. The only one who messaged me the night of the dinner to say, "They're falling apart without your money." She would have known exactly how much I lost. I'm not cashing the check. Not yet. It's in a drawer. Because this isn't about the money. Not anymore. It's about the fact that someone, somewhere, decided I deserve to get something back, even if it was too late for the people who should have done it first. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I made repairs in my parents' house, but they refused to pay. "We gave this money for your sister's vacation," my mom said. Dad laughed, but I shocked them. I spent 2 months of my summer fixing up my parents' house. 2 months of waking up early, sweating through my clothes, and working late into the night. The place was falling apart when I started. Cracked walls, leaking pipes, and floors that creaked like they were about to give way. They couldn't afford a contractor, so they asked me to do it, promising to pay me $8,000 when I was done. It wasn't even much considering the amount of work, but I agreed because they were my parents. I didn't do anything half-ass. I put in new floors, repainted the whole house, and fixed the electrical wiring so the lights wouldn't flicker like in a horror movie. I replaced their cabinets, fixed the roof, and even landscaped the front yard. When I was done, their house looked brand new. They were thrilled. So, when I finally sat down with them in the living room expecting to get paid, I wasn't worried. My mom was pouring herself a cup of tea. My dad was stretched out on his recliner, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. Then my mom casually said, "Oh honey, about the money. We gave it to Amanda for her vacation." I laughed. Actually, I laughed because, for a second, I thought she was joking. My dad chuckled a little too, like this was some kind of funny misunderstanding. "Yeah," he added, shaking his head like I was being silly. Amanda and Josh really needed a break before the wedding. It's a stressful time for them. I stared at them, waiting for the part where they said, "Just kidding, here's your money." But that part never came. "You gave my money to Amanda?" I repeated, trying to wrap my head around it. "Well, technically it was our money," my mother said. "And we thought you wouldn't mind. Amanda's been under so much pressure with the wedding planning, and they just needed a little getaway. You always say you don't take vacations anyway, so it just made sense." Dad grinned and shook his head like I was the one being unreasonable. I felt a cold pit in my stomach. "You promised to pay me." My mom sighed like I was being difficult. "And we will eventually, but right now Amanda needs it more. You understand, right?" I looked at my dad, hoping he'd say something, but he just leaned back in his chair, still grinning like this was a lesson I should learn. Then I said, "Well then, I hope you understand that I'm done doing anything for you." Her smile instantly disappeared. My mom's face fell as if I had just cursed her. My father sat up in his chair, no longer amused. They had expected me to be upset, maybe even argue a little, but they hadn't expected me to flat out say I was done with them. "Brian, don't be dramatic," my mother said. I stood up. "Dramatic? I worked on this house for 2 months and you just gave my money away." My dad scoffed. "It's not like you needed it right now." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I wasn't going to waste my breath arguing with people who clearly didn't respect me. I walked out. They called after me, but I ignored them. A few days went by. I didn't return their calls or texts. I wasn't ready to deal with them. Then, out of the blue, Amanda called me. "Hey Brian, are you okay? You didn't answer Mom's calls." I kept my voice calm. "Did they tell you why?" She hesitated. "No, just that you were upset about something." Of course they didn't tell her. I sighed. "Amanda, do you know where they got the money for your vacation?" Silence. "Then what do you mean?" "They gave you my payment. The money they owed me for fixing up their house." More silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. "Wait, what?" "They promised me $8,000 for the work I did. Instead of paying me, they gave it to you and Josh for a trip." She was silent for so long I thought she had hung up. Then she whispered, "Oh my God, Brian. I didn't know. I thought, I'll pay you back. All of it." I hadn't expected that. "Amanda, you don't have to." "No," she interrupted. "I had no idea. If I had known, I wouldn't have taken a penny from them. I'll send it back to you today." I was stunned. Amanda and I had always been close, but I hadn't expected her to fix what wasn't her fault. True to her word, she sent the full $8,000 back to me that same day. Then, of course, all hell broke loose. That night, my phone rang again. It was Mom. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, Dad called. Then Mom again. Then a text. "Mom, did Amanda send you money?" Me, "Yes." She realized it wasn't hers. 10 seconds later, she called. I finally picked up. "You had no right to take that money," she snapped. I actually laughed. "Are you serious? You gave her my money. She gave it back to me. That's called righting a wrong. You made her do it. Amanda made her own decision. You should be proud she actually knows the difference between right and wrong." She gasped as if I had just slapped her. Dad got on the phone. "You're going to send her the money back?" "No." I hung up. And that's when I decided that if they were going to act like selfish, entitled people, maybe it was time they learned what it felt like to be on the receiving end. For the next few days, my parents went into full meltdown mode. They called me nonstop, left me voicemails, and sent me long, dramatic texts about how I was tearing the family apart over a few measly dollars. Dad even tried to send me a text that just said, "Give the money back. This is final." Final, like he was my boss or something. I ignored it. Then, out of nowhere, my mom showed up at my apartment. I heard knocking, then the doorbell ringing over and over. I looked through the peephole. There she was, arms folded, looking pissed. I thought about not answering, but I knew she wouldn't leave, so I opened the door. She came in without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." "No, we really don't." She sighed dramatically, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to me. It was a bill for rent. I frowned. "What is this?" "You lived in our house for 2 months while we renovated. You ate our food, used our electricity, and slept under our roof. It's only fair that you contribute." I stared at her. "You're charging me rent after I spent 2 months fixing your house for free?" "You didn't do it for free," she shot back. "Well, you agreed on a price and then Amanda needed the money. You can't just take it back." I laughed. "That's funny, because I can, and I did." She huffed. "If you want to be petty about it, then yes, we'll charge you rent. It's only fair." I nodded slowly. "Okay then. I guess it's only fair that I charge you for the renovations at contractor rates." She blinked. "What?" I pulled out my phone. "Professional contractors charge about $50,000 for the work I did. Subtract the $8,000 you owed me, and you still owe me $42,000. She looked as if she'd swallowed a lemon. "Brian, don't be ridiculous." I grinned. No, you're right. It's only fair." She opened and closed her mouth, then stood up. Your father will hear about this. Tell him I'll take checks or wire transfers. She stormed out. And that's when I had an idea. If they wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty. I still had every receipt from the renovation. The flooring, the plumbing, the cabinets, the new fixtures, all of it had been purchased under my name, which meant technically they were mine. So the next day, I drove over to her house and I started taking things back. I drove up to my parents' house with a truck and a toolbox, ready to reclaim what was technically mine. I started with the simplest things. The new outdoor lights, unscrewed and thrown in the truck. The fancy new house numbers I had installed, popped right off. Then I went inside. I had my own key, so I let myself in while my parents were out. I went straight to the kitchen. Those brand new cabinets I had installed? Mine. I removed every single door, leaving them wide open and bare. The sleek modern faucet I replaced it with? Gone. Back to the old leaky one they used to complain about. I worked quickly, moving through the house like a one-man wrecking crew. Light fixtures uninstalled. Shelves taken down. I even removed the brand new shower head in their bathroom and replaced it with the rusty, low-pressure one they had before. Then I got to the flooring, the brand new hardwood floor that I spent weeks installing, the ones I personally paid for because they promised to pay me back. Yep, that too. I got down on my knees and started prying up the planks, being careful not to break them so I could reuse them elsewhere. When I had a whole corner of the living room done, I heard tires screeching in the driveway. The front door burst open. My dad stood there, red-faced, eyes bulging. My mom was right behind him, panting like she had walked into a crime scene. "What are you doing?" my dad yelled. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. "Oh, just getting back what I paid for." "You can't do that," my mom screamed. I stood up, holding one of the wooden planks. "Sure I can. Look, I bought all this. My name is on the receipts. So technically, this is my flooring." My father's hands clenched into fists. "You ungrateful little." I held up a finger. "Ah, careful now. Don't want to say anything you regret. You're destroying our home," my mother wailed. I gestured around. "No, I'm just undoing my work since you didn't think it was worth paying for." That's when Amanda walked in. She must have been on her way over, because she stepped in, took one look around, and her jaw dropped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Brian, what are you doing?" I exhaled. "Mom and Dad are trying to charge me rent for the 2 months I was here, so I'm just picking up my stuff." Her head snapped in our parents' direction. "Are you serious? First you steal his money, and now you're trying to squeeze more out of him." Mom crossed her arms. "Amanda, this is none of your business." "Of course it is. I paid him back because he deserved it, and now you're punishing him for it." Dad stepped in. "Amanda, we are your parents. Do not raise your voice to us." "Then stop acting like entitled children," she shot back. They gasped, really gasped, as if she had just cursed them in church. Then Mom did something I wasn't expecting. She turned to Amanda and said, "I can't believe how cheap you are." Amanda froze. "What? You're choosing Brian over us?" Mom said, her voice dripping with disappointment. "Over your own parents." Dad shook his head. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." Amanda's face turned red. I could tell she was angry. I had never seen her look at them like that before. Then she said something that made me completely stop what I was doing. "You know what?" She reached into her purse, pulled out her house key, and threw it on the floor. "I'm done with you." Then she turned to me. "Need some help with the floors?" I grinned. "Yeah. Hand me that crowbar." Our parents watched in absolute horror as Amanda helped me tear the house apart. I thought my parents had been angry before. I thought I had seen them at their worst. I was wrong. Watching Amanda kneel next to me, pulling up floorboards like we were on some kind of home renovation reality show, only in reverse, completely broke them. My mom started shaking her head over and over as if in denial. "Amanda, stop this right now. You don't know what you're doing." Amanda didn't even look at her. "No, Mom. For the first time, I understand. You're turning against us," my dad yelled. Amanda laughed under her breath. "No, Dad. I'm standing up for someone who deserves it." Then Mom started to cry. Not quiet, sensible crying, but loud, dramatic sobbing as if she were the victim of some great betrayal. "Oh, oh my God," she wailed. "I can't believe this is happening after all we've done for you. For both of you." Amanda and I exchanged looks. Then Dad did something that actually made me stop. He turned to Amanda and said, "Fine. If you want to betray this family, don't bother coming to the wedding." The room fell silent. Amanda slowly stood up and grabbed the crowbar. "What? You heard me," he said, standing up. "If you want to side with Brian, then don't bother showing up on your big day. You and Josh can run off and live your selfish little lives without us." Mom sniffled. "That breaks our hearts, Amanda. But you leave us no choice." I waited for Amanda to snap back, to tell them they were being ridiculous, but she just stood there. Then she nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Okay." Mom blinked. "What? You don't want me in the wedding? Fine." Dad scoffed. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. You'll come crawling back and apologize." "No," Amanda interrupted. "I won't." Then she turned to me. "Come on. I'm hungry." And we walked out. I expected my parents to come after us, to yell, to beg, to tell us to stop, but they didn't say a word. The silence followed us to Amanda's car. We got in, closed the doors, and drove off. We were halfway to a diner when Amanda exhaled sharply and muttered, "Well, this has escalated." I looked at her. "Are you okay?" She gripped the wheel. "Nope, but you were right. They don't respect us. They only care about themselves." I didn't know what to say. Then she snorted. "Really? The look on Dad's face when I threw down my key? Totally worth it." I grinned. "Yeah. And you should have seen Mom when you picked up that crowbar." Amanda laughed. Then, after a moment, she asked, "What are you going to do next?" I thought about it. About how they had used me, taken me for granted, and thrown a tantrum when I finally fought back. Then I smiled. "Oh, I'm not done yet." Amanda and I sat in the diner for a long time, drinking coffee and talking about things we hadn't really said out loud before. How our parents had always favored her, but not in a loving way. More like she was an investment because she was getting married to someone they approved of. How they had always expected me to just do things for them, no matter how much it cost me. How neither of us ever really felt loved by them, just used. At one point, Amanda shook her head. "I can't believe I'm actually considering disinviting our own parents from my wedding." I raised an eyebrow. "Considering they just disinvited you, honestly, they did you a favor." She laughed but looked tired. "Josh will freak out when I tell him." I frowned. "Wait, does he know about this?" She hesitated. "He knows they can be difficult, but I kind of downplayed it." "Amanda," I groaned. "I know. I just didn't want to dump all the family drama on him. His parents are so normal, you know?" "Yeah. Well, he's marrying into it, so he should probably know the whole picture." She sighed. "You're right. I'll talk to him tonight." Then she grinned. "But first, what's your next move?" I grinned. "Oh, you'll see." The next morning, I made a few phone calls. You see, my parents had been bragging about their beautifully renovated home to everyone. Their friends, their neighbors, even their extended family. They had posted pictures on Facebook showing off their hard work. So I decided to tell people the real story. I started with a simple post. "Hey everyone, remember that home renovation my parents were showing off? Fun fact, I did all the work, I paid for all the materials, and they promised to pay me back. Instead, they took the money and gave it to my sister for a vacation. Then they tried to charge me rent for the time I stayed there while they fixed her house. When my sister found out, she returned the money to me, and our parents lost it and disinvited her from her own wedding. So, if you ever need a free remodel, just call my parents. They love free labor." Then I added before and after pictures, and I tagged them, Amanda and some relatives. Then I logged off and let the internet do its thing. I didn't expect the explosion. Within an hour, my post had dozens of comments. People were shocked. Some messaged me directly asking if it was true. Family members were furious. Some of my parents' friends even commented things like, "I can't believe they would do this to their own son." Then Amanda texted me. "Amanda, oh my God, Mom is calling me 100 times. Amanda, Dad too. Amanda, I am so proud of you. Then my phone rang. I grinned when I saw my mom's name. I picked it up. Delete this post right now, she screamed. Hi, Mom. Nice morning, huh? You're humiliating us. I shrugged. I was just telling the truth. You're making us look like monsters. I grinned. I mean, if the shoe fits. Then Dad got on the line. Brian, you have no idea what you just did. Oh, I think I do. People are calling us, asking if this is true. Our friends, our church group, our family. Good. Maybe now you'll finally learn some consequences. Mom started to cry again. Brian, please. We're your parents. Funny, you didn't act like parents when you stole from me. Dad's voice grew cold. You think you won? You think you're smart? I laughed. No, Dad, I don't think I won. I know I did. Then I hung up, and it felt amazing. For the next few days, my parents did damage control. They tried everything. Calling relatives to explain, writing passive-aggressive posts about family betrayal, even texting Amanda and me separately pretending to be heartbroken victims. I ignored them. Amanda ignored them. And the world continued to spin. But I wasn't done yet. You see, my parents loved their reputation. Their house wasn't just their home. It was their image. They had spent years bragging about how perfect their lives were. Their beautifully renovated home was now their favorite topic of conversation. And I had one last surprise for them. I still had all my receipts from the renovations. And since my parents never paid me, that meant I could legally put a mechanic's lien on their house. For those who don't know, a mechanic's lien is something contractors use when homeowners don't pay for work done on their property. It basically means they can't sell or refinance the house until the debt is paid. So, I filed one for $50,000. And let me tell you, when my parents found out, they lost their minds. My mom called me screaming. My dad sent angry texts. Dad, you can't do this. Dad, this is our house. Dad, how dare you, you ungrateful brat. I just sent a text back to me. It's only fair. Slightly smiling face. Then I blocked her. And just like that, I was done. Amanda and I moved on. She officially uninvited them from the wedding. At first, they tried to act like they didn't care. But when they realized she meant it, Mom sent one last message. Amanda, please, we're your parents. We just want to be here for your special day. She left it on read. Josh, by the way, fully supported her. Turns out he always thought my parents were a little toxic, but he didn't want to go overboard. When he heard what happened, he said, yeah, no, they're terrible. Good call. As for the house, my parents had no choice but to pay off the lien. $50,000, way more than the $8,000 they originally owed me. And the best part? They had to sell their car. Poetic justice. Amanda's wedding was beautiful. Our parents weren't there, and you know what? No one missed them. As the reception was winding down, Amanda and I were standing outside watching the sunset. She nudged me. So, do you think they learned their lesson? I grinned. Not a chance. But it's not my problem anymore. She smiled. Feels good. Doesn't it? I took a deep breath. The air was clear. No tension, no stress, just peace. Yeah, I said. It really does. Now on to the next story. Story 9. For 5 years, I financed my sister while she laughed and said, he was born a loser and will die a loser. When I found out, I didn't say anything. A month later, when she came asking for help, for 5 years I gave everything to my sister, Lisa. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. It's just who I am. I became a doctor because I believe in helping people, and when it came to my own family, I thought there was nothing more important than being there for them. Lisa and her husband, Mike, were constantly struggling with money. Every month there was a new problem, a new reason they needed help, and each time they turned to me. It started small. Covering their overdue bills, buying groceries when their refrigerator was empty. Then it escalated. When Mike's car broke down and they couldn't afford to fix it, I paid. When they were late with the rent again, I sent them the money. When they wanted a new place because their old place was too small and depressing, I bought them one, $90,000. My wife, Emily, tried to talk me out of it. Frank, that's our savings, she said. We have 2 kids. You can't just give that away. But I did. I told myself that Lisa would have done the same for me. That's what family is supposed to do. And every time she said, Frank, I don't know what I'd do without you, it made me feel like I was doing the right thing. Then one night Lisa called. I had just finished a brutal shift at the hospital. I was exhausted, drained. She wanted me to come over. I said no, maybe for the first time ever. She sounded surprised but didn't argue. All right, I'll talk to you later. A few minutes passed, and then I noticed that my phone was still connected. She never hung up. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I heard voices, laughter, glasses clinking. She was with people. And then I heard her say my name. Oh my God, Frank, she scoffed. Please. He was born a loser and he's going to die a loser. Laughter. Not just hers, others too. He thinks he's some kind of saint, she continued. Like, oh wow, Frank. You pay my bills. You must be so important. What a joke. Someone else chimed in. A voice I recognized. Jason, one of my old enemies from high school. We had never gotten along, and for some reason my sister was friends with him. Yeah, Jason said. Frank was always pathetic, trying to be the good guy. It's embarrassing. Lisa laughed. But hey, as long as he keeps paying for everything, why should I stop him? I sat and listened for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of insults, of her and her so-called friends mocking me, tearing me apart. For years, I thought I was being a good brother. I thought I was helping. I thought I was making a difference in their lives. But to them, I was just a joke, a free bank account. I stared at my phone, gripping it so tightly my hand began to hurt. My chest felt hollow. My face was hot. Then I hung up. I didn't call her back. I didn't yell. I didn't demand an explanation. I just sat there and thought about every time I had helped her, every dollar I had given her, every sacrifice I had made, and how she had wiped her feet on me like I was nothing. And for the first time in my life, I felt something I never thought I'd feel for my own sister. Hatred. I didn't confront her, not yet. I just waited. And a few days later, she showed up at my house with Mike as if nothing had happened. A few days went by and I didn't say anything to Lisa. I didn't text her. I didn't call her. I barely talked to my wife, Emily, about it. I just kept replaying the conversation in my head over and over. Every word. Every laugh. I wanted to believe that I had misheard, that maybe I had taken it out of context. But I knew what I heard. And the worst part? It wasn't even anger that hit me first. It was humiliation. I had spent years sacrificing for Lisa, putting her needs ahead of my own family, ahead of my own future, and all the while she saw me as pathetic. Then, as always, she showed up unannounced. Lisa and Mike pulled into my driveway like they owned the place. No warning, no asking if we were home or busy. That was just the way they were. For years they'd come over whenever they wanted, sit at our table, eat our food, and expect me to drop everything for them. And for years I let them. Emily was the first to see them through the window. She sighed and looked at me. Are you going to say something? I shook my head. Not yet. I wasn't ready. I didn't even know what I wanted to say. The doorbell rang, and before I could even get up, Lisa and Mike came in as if they lived there. My son, Ethan, was in the living room playing video games. My daughter, Sophie, was in the kitchen with Emily. Lisa grinned as if nothing had happened. Hey Frank, we were in the neighborhood. Thought we'd stop by. Mike patted me on the shoulder. What's up, man? I nodded but said nothing. Lisa popped down on the couch and scrolled through her phone. Man, I'm starving. Do you have anything to eat? Emily turned from the kitchen. Actually, we were just about to go out. Lisa barely looked up. Oh, where? Just a family dinner, Emily said. The 4 of us. Lisa frowned. You didn't invite us? Emily smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We didn't know you were coming. Lisa rolled her eyes as if we were the ones being rude. Whatever, we'll just hang out for a while. I stood there watching them make themselves comfortable, acting like nothing had changed, like I hadn't heard every horrible thing she said about me. And I realized this wasn't just the first time she talked about me that way. She had always seen me that way. It was like something inside of me broke. I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad. I was just done. So I didn't argue. I didn't tell her to leave. I just ignored her. When they spoke to me, I kept my answers short. When Lisa made a joke, I didn't laugh. And when she asked for food again, Emily simply said, "We're not cooking tonight." It was subtle, but Lisa and Mike sensed it. The energy was different. I wasn't playing along anymore. After about an hour of awkward small talk, Lisa stretched and yawned. "All right, we should probably get going." Mike stood up. "Yeah, man. Let's get a beer soon." I just nodded. No handshake. No yeah. Sounds good. Just silence. Lisa hesitated for a second. Maybe for the first time she felt something was wrong, but she didn't say anything. When they left, Emily looked at me. "You can't let them keep doing this." I exhaled slowly. I know. I wasn't going to. Not anymore. And then, a month later, Lisa came back. Not to visit, not to thank me. She needed money again. And this time I was ready. Lisa didn't come over for a month. She must have sensed something was wrong because the texts started pouring in. "Hey, haven't heard from you. Is everything okay? Let's have dinner soon. We miss you, Frank. Why are you ignoring me?" I ignored most of them. The ones I answered, I kept short. No warmth, no energy. They didn't deserve it. Then, one night, my phone rang. "Lisa." I stared at it, debating. I knew exactly what it was. I could feel it. Against my better judgment, I answered it. "Frank." "Hey." She sounded way too happy. "How's my favorite brother?" I didn't respond to the fake enthusiasm. "What do you need, Lisa?" Pause, then a nervous laugh. "Wow. Can a sister just check in?" I remained silent. She sighed. "All right, fine. We need your help. Things have been tough." There it was. She went on, her voice dropping to that helpless tone she always used when she wanted something. "Mike lost his job again and, well, we're behind on some bills." I almost laughed. Of course, Mike had lost his job. The man barely worked. Lisa continued, "It's really bad this time, Frank. We're behind on the rent. We could lose the apartment. The apartment I bought for her." I clenched my jaw. "Lisa, I can't help you this time." Silence. Then an irritated laugh. "Wait, what?" I said, "I can't help you." "You always help." "Not anymore." There was a pause before she spoke again, and now there was an edge to her voice. "Frank, you're a doctor. It's not like you can't afford it." I exhaled sharply. "That's not the point." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh my God. Are you serious? You're just going to let your sister get kicked out after all I've done for you?" I almost dropped the phone. "Everything she's done for me?" I took a slow breath. "Lisa, I heard you." She didn't say anything. "That night when you accidentally called me and didn't hang up, I heard everything. You and your friends laughing at me, calling me a loser, saying I was pathetic." Still silence. Then she let out a breath and muttered, "Oh, for sake. Frank, that was nothing. You're really mad about that." I felt something inside me crack. "You're not even denying it," I said quietly. She moaned. "Jesus, Frank, we were drinking. It was a joke. It didn't mean anything." "It meant something to me." Another silence. Then she changed tactics, her voice softer now, pretending to be hurt. "Frank, come on. You know I love you. You're my brother." "No, Lisa," I said. "I was your wallet. And now that the money is gone, you're playing the family card." She scoffed. "Oh, so what? You're cutting me off over one stupid conversation? After all I've been through? You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being realistic," I said. "I should have cut you off years ago." She started to argue, but I hung up. I stood there, hands shaking, head pounding. Emily walked in, took one look at my face and said, "What happened?" "She needs money," I mumbled. Emily sighed. "And I told her no." Emily exhaled in relief. "Good." But it wasn't over. The next day, Lisa and Mike showed up at my house, and they weren't alone. The next evening, as the sun was setting, I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked out the window and felt my stomach tighten. Lisa and Mike, and they weren't alone. Jason was with them. Jason, the same guy from the phone call, the same guy who had laughed at me for being pathetic, the same guy who bullied me in high school, shoving me into lockers, mocking me in front of girls, spreading rumors about me. What the hell was he doing here? Emily came up behind me. What is she doing? I don't know, I said, but I had a bad feeling. The doorbell rang. I didn't move. Then, before I could decide what to do, Lisa banged on the door. Frank, I know you're home. Open up. Emily crossed her arms. Don't do it. I wanted to listen to her. I should have listened. But something was boiling inside of me. Lisa bringing Jason here wasn't an accident. She was trying to intimidate me, to make me feel small again. I wasn't that kid anymore. So I opened the door. Lisa was standing there with a fake, tight-lipped smile. Mike was standing behind her, arms crossed, looking pissed. And Jason, he was grinning like it was a joke. Hey, little Frankie, Jason grinned. Been a long time. I ignored him and looked directly at Lisa. Why is he here? Lisa rolled her eyes. Relax, it's no big deal. We were just talking and Jason said he should come along to help, mediate things. Mediate? I repeated. Lisa sighed like I was wearing her out. Frank, look, I get it. You're angry about what you think you heard. But we're family. I need you right now. We're in serious trouble. I leaned against the door frame. That's not my problem. Her eyes narrowed. Wow, so that's it? You're really just going to cut me off? I nodded. Yeah, I am. Mike, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly stepped forward. You're a selfish piece of... Frank, I raised an eyebrow. Selfish? Jason snorted. Yeah, Frankie, come on. You're loaded and your own sister is struggling. What kind of brother are you? I looked at all three of them and let out a short laugh. You know what's funny? If I had said yes, if I had given Lisa more money, you guys would still be calling me a loser behind my back. Lisa groaned. Frank, stop. You're making a bigger deal out of this than it is. I shook my head. No, I'm just tired of being a jerk. Jason chuckled and muttered. Always so dramatic. I turned to him. And you? You used to make my life hell. Now you show up at my house trying to make me feel guilty. I stepped forward and lowered my voice. Get the hell off my property. Jason's smirk faded. Lisa scoffed. Jesus, Frank, you're really kicking us out? I crossed my arms. You were never invited. Mike muttered something under his breath, then grabbed Lisa's arm. Forget him. He's a lost cause. Lisa shook him off. No, Frank, I beg you. This isn't just about me. My kids. They'll be fine. I cut in. I helped your oldest get through college, and I know for a fact that your youngest still talks to mom and dad. If they need help, they'll go to them. Not you. She blinked, stunned. I continued. I didn't cut off your children, Lisa. I cut you off. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Jason sighed dramatically. This has been a waste of time. He turned and walked to the car. Mike followed. Lisa stood there for another moment as if she wanted to say something. Then she finally turned and left. I closed the door behind her. Emily came up, still tense. That was worse than I thought. I nodded. She's not done. And I was right. Because a few days later, Lisa did something I never thought she'd do. She turned our parents against me. I knew Lisa wasn't done. She never accepted defeat. A few days after she showed up at my house with Jason and Mike, my mom called. Frank, she said, her voice tense. What's going on between you and Lisa? I sighed. What did she tell you? She said you refused to help her when she and Mike were on the verge of losing their home. She said you turned your back on family. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Did she say anything else? Mom hesitated. She said you were acting strange. That Emily is trying to keep you away from the family. Of course, that was Lisa's move. Paint me as the bad guy, throw Emily under the bus, make herself look like the helpless victim. I had planned to keep this between Lisa and me. I didn't want to drag our parents into it. But now she had forced my hand. I took a breath. Mom, I need you to listen to me carefully. There's something you don't know. And then I told her everything. The 5 years of financial support, the apartment, the car repairs, the education bills, the groceries, the utilities, the endless cycle of Lisa needing and me giving. Then I told her about the phone call, how Lisa had forgotten to hang up, how I had sat there listening to my own sister trash me in front of Jason and others, how she laughed about me and called me a loser. By the time I finished, there was complete silence on the other end. Then Mom exhaled sharply. "Oh my God. I didn't want to tell you," I admitted. "But she's trying to turn you against me." I had to. Mom's voice was cold now, something I had rarely heard from her. And after all that, she still had the nerve to ask for money? Yes. There was another pause, then a muttered, "Unbelievable." I could hear Dad in the background. "What's going on?" Mom must have put me on speaker because she started explaining everything. As she spoke, I heard Dad's breathing change. He was getting angrier by the second. When she finished, he growled, "That ungrateful little." He cut himself off, probably trying to keep his temper in check. Then, to my complete shock, he said, "Frank, don't give her another goddamn cent." I blinked. Dad had always been the keep the peace type, but this was different. "She's taken advantage of you for too long," he continued. "And now she's trying to make you the bad guy?" "No, that's not happening." I swallowed. "Thanks, Dad." Mom sighed. "She's not going to like this. You know how she is." "I don't care," I said. "She made her choice." And she did. Because when Lisa found out I had told our parents the truth, all hell broke loose. She blew up my phone with texts and calls. I ignored them. Then she texted in the family group chat, "Lisa, wow, Frank. You just couldn't keep your mouth shut? Could you? You turned Mom and Dad against me. I hope you're happy." No one responded. Then, an hour later, I got a call from her oldest son. I hesitated but answered. "Hey man, Uncle Frank," he said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything my mom did to you." I closed my eyes, exhaling. "You don't have to apologize for her. She's been acting crazy since your parents confronted her. Yelling, blaming everyone but herself. I just want you to know I don't support what she did, and neither does my brother." That was all I needed to hear. Lisa had officially lost everything. She had burned every bridge. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I thought it was over. Lisa had lost me. She had lost our parents, and even her own kids weren't siding with her. But she wasn't done. A week after my parents cut her off, Emily and I were out grocery shopping when I got a call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer those, but something told me to pick up. "Frank," a voice slurred on the other end. "Mike, what do you want?" I asked. "You think you're better than us?" He spat. "You think you can just cut us off and we'll disappear?" I sighed. "Mike, I'm not doing this with you." "Oh, you'll do this," he said. "Because you owe us." I laughed. "Owe you for what?" "For everything." His voice was getting louder. "Lisa took care of you when you were younger. She was always there for you. And now when she needs you the most, you abandon her." I rolled my eyes. "She used me, Mike. There's a difference." There was a pause. Then he sneered, "You're going to regret this." And he hung up. I didn't think much of it. Just another tantrum. But 2 days later, someone slashed the tires on my wife's car. Emily found it in the morning, for flat tires. Then, the day after that, someone egged our front door. It was obvious Lisa and Mike were trying to get back at me in the pettiest ways possible. But the final straw came when my boss at the hospital called me into his office. I sat down, confused. "Something wrong." He folded his hands. "Frank, we received an anonymous complaint about you. Multiple complaints, actually." My stomach dropped. "What?" "They accuse you of unethical behavior, taking bribes, mistreating patients." He sighed. "We know it's nonsense, but we have to file a report and go through the motions. I just wanted to give you a heads up." I clenched my jaw. "Lisa, she and Mike were trying to destroy my career." I took a deep breath and nodded. "I appreciate you telling me." When I got home, I told Emily everything. She stared at me, then said, "That's it. We're going to the police." I hesitated. "It won't prove anything." She shook her head. They slashed my tires. They vandalized our house. They're trying to ruin your job. We're not letting them get away with this. So we did. We filed a police report for the vandalism. I had security cameras installed, and I made sure Lisa and Mike knew it. 2 days later, I sent Lisa a final message. If you or Mike come near my home, my family, or my workplace again, I will press charges. You are officially cut off. You have no one left to manipulate. Good luck. She didn't respond. But I heard through my parents that Lisa and Mike were struggling badly. With no money, no help, and no one left to bail them out. They were drowning in debt and no one cared. She did this to herself. And for the first time in my life, I felt absolutely nothing for her. No guilt, no sadness. Just peace. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.